Recording in progress.
I call the February 11th, 2025 City of Trinidad
City Council meeting to order. We're reconvening from closed session with nothing to report. And so would you please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the power which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first on tonight's agenda is the approval of the agenda. So I'll ask the council first, any changes to tonight's agenda that you'd like to make? We wait for I don't think he changed at all. All right, no, it's any public comments or changes to tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council and we are ready for a motion. If you would like to. So move. Okay. So second, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Yeah, we approve the agenda price. We can always change our minds. Approval of tonight's minutes is the next item. This is for January 14th, 2025. Any comments from the council, any edits or changes? No. Any comments from the public on the minutes from January 14th? All right, back to the council. There a move to approve the minutes from January 14th. So moved. And a second from Katie. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All right, so the minutes have passed for January 14th. And next is council reports and committee assignments. And I think I started that way, so I'll start with you, Bryce, this time.
I do have a little report here, if I can find my notes. Went to my first HCOG meeting and resolved that Mike Johnson's going to continue as the chair. Steve Madrone will be vice chair. Executive committee will be Stacy Salazar. And they had 14 applicants for the position of executive director. 4 or 5 very strong applicants from this area. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Katie, did you have anything you wanted to say?
The Animal Advisory Committee has a meeting set for March 5th at 6 o'clock here in the town hall.
Terry, do you have anything you want to share?
I don't. I'm just new getting on with our EDC, and I believe you attended the meeting. I was unable to attend. There's another one happening at the end of this month, so I'll report back on that meeting next time. And then I think I also signed up for the Surrey Management Plan Implementation Committee. I don't have anything to report on that. Still getting on board.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have nothing to report on this.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, briefly, I did attend our ET, the Red Economic Division meeting on the 27th. That was the seminar on healthcare, and I think you've probably already seen that in the press. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but it was a nice kind of overview of what the county is trying to do to attract more healthcare professionals to this area. And then we had the LAFCO meeting on January 15th. And we elected a new chair, Steve Madrone, or Supervisor Madrone will be taking that over. We also did a preliminary preview of the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District service area and sphere of influence, but the final review of that will be in March. So that was LAFCO. Yeah, skip that one. That was not too much to report there. Then CERT, I just wanted to mention that the Community Emergency Response Team has now gathered well over 1,000 pairs of shoes for the shoe drive. And that's going to end this Friday. So thanks again, everyone. And there's going to be a county-wide CERT fundraiser March 1st from 6:30 to 10:30. It's the Mardi Gras theme, so it should be very fun. Again, March 1st at the Sequoia Conference Center. You can get your free feather mask if you register right away. And the online registration is swrotary.org. If anybody needs that, I'll post that on the website. So you can support your CERT team by going to the Mardi Gras. All right, I think that's it for council reports and committee assignments. Any questions from the council about any of those reports? Okay, any questions from the public? Comments? Okay. I don't see any, so we're going to move on to staff reports, and I'll turn it over to our city manager, Joe Tigney-Bocci.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly, members of the council, and those of you here and watching from home or wherever you're at. Updates from the last council meeting. Staff attended a QRI management team meeting, trying to discuss some of the engineering choices and consultant choices that we have for the project upcoming for the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail. We were discussing both short-term opening and the longer-term opening of the boardwalk project. It's going to be a more difficult task on short-term opening. There was some discussion on placing a bench on the current trail in an area that has access and can be safely enjoyed. The trail at this point is pretty steep, and even staff that's been on it to help clear it had to have ropes to get up and down that part of the path that we cleared for the project team to get down on the trail. I will provide additional information as it becomes available on both short-term and long-term ALMT. The water tank and pipeline, the tank filling process started last week. The tank is full. They were doing some pipeline cleaning today. They had to run some water through the pipeline, some highly chlorinated water, and then they took some samples. So that testing should be complete by the end of this week. And then next Tuesday, we're going to have a shutdown. We sent letters out to all of the residents who are on the water system, had multiple discussions with the business owners. Tuesday seemed to be the best day. So next Tuesday, there's going to be a shutdown. It's planned to last most of the day. We're hoping that it will be shorter than that. But for all of you who are out there and at home, Tuesday, the water's going to shut down pretty early, so just be aware. Once it does get fired back up again, you should probably run the water for a couple of minutes. It'll be probably a little discolored. That's just part of the process of what happens when you introduce water back into the system. No safety or health concerns. It's a normal part of the process. But just so you know, you probably will see a little discoloration, but no real health concerns with that. The West Haven Intertie project is finally moving along pretty at a nice pace. We spent the past couple of weeks working on a memorandum of understanding. The draft is before council tonight to discuss. Then staff will take that back up and work with the West Haven staff to create and develop an MOU that will help us manage that intertie. We hope to get that project into construction at spring of this year. It's a simple project in some ways, but it's complex in the fact that we're having to manage two different agencies. So we're hopeful that we're going to get it under construction and that we will have an intertie by the end of the summer that will help us when we have needs and help West Haven if they have needs in emergency water. Staff is trying to work on our GIS, a mapping system that we have had for some time. We attended a Zoom training on that. We're hoping to learn how to use the mapping tool a little bit better, especially to help map our infrastructure, keep track of our inventory, signs and benches and trash cans and the kind of things that we own and manage here in town. And we hope to be able to share those maps with the public as we develop them and collect more infrastructure. Civic Club's going to have a Valentine's Day event Friday evening here at Town Hall. They're going to have quite a few silent auction items and a raffle have to be present to win, I've been told. So I hope you all will participate in that. The Clam Beach Run had 800 registered as of last week. When I went up there on Saturday, there was quite a good turnout. From what I've heard, it was a great run. The river wasn't too high, and we had our CERT team on site, so we want to thank them for helping to participate with traffic control and crowd control and communication. And we look forward to next year's Clam Beach Run. That's all I have, Mayor. Happy to answer questions for anyone that has them. Oh, one other thing. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that this last month's Pullman bill invoice was $13,200. I know there's some specific requests for that, so I would also like to say that I am in the process of interviewing a couple of different alternatives to Pullman. So I hope to have news on that in the next update next month. Please follow. I can answer your question.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Any questions from the public on the city manager's report? Please.
Sorry, just on the water shut off, do you have an approximate time in the morning?
8 a.m. Yeah, I was going to say 9. I think 8 a.m.
And then what's the best way for us to know when it comes back on?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I would say I would run a faucet.
Check the faucet every now and again.
I would just leave one open, like leave the farthest one, like the shower in the master bedroom or something, then you can hear it running.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the best way. Thank you.
Maybe we can put it on the city's website emergency banner, I was just thinking.
Yeah, we'll figure out something.
Yeah, so we can kind of say, water's off, water should be back on or something.
It'll give you all a good reason to sign up for that notify that we have on the website. So check on the website. We appreciate that.
I don't see Lieutenant McCall online, so is there no law?
No, Mayor, Lieutenant McCall is not here this
Okay,
evening.
but there is information in the packet if anyone wants to review that. Okay, so with that, then we will be at items on 4, and at this time, things that are not on tonight's agenda can be discussed, and give or take 3 minutes if you have something you want to share with the community.
Sorry, I guess I'm the beast, but wanted to come back around on the bus survey that was sent out. I responded with some things about, I don't know if you've heard anything yet, but I was curious if anybody, Jack, I think you're on the transportation. I don't know if they're talking about it yet or.
My first meeting is tomorrow morning. But what's the question?
Oh, well, I'm just concerned. I'm curious if they're going to increase the frequency of buses through town.
They are. So right now it's every 3 hours.
Yes.
They're hoping to get down to every, like 1 area. But that's like a kind of long term.
I think the big thing is just considering the impacts of the bus actually coming through town more frequently. How do you feel about that? Obviously I'm a vested person because it comes down Hector. It's really not that bad right now. An hour, honestly, probably isn't that bad either. But there was some talk about 15 minutes in the thing that sounded a little bit like, well, so just a voice of, hey, let's just take a minute beat and make sure that we're all comfortable. I think there could be alternatives for the bus to turn around without having to come through town, but it may not be worth it for an hour, the other question, and I maybe should have brought this up in the minutes, but the security, just how's the security guard situation going? I was just curious to hear if they could give us an update and if we still feel confident that this is a good use of city funds. I'm not saying it's not, I don't have an opinion, not trying to but I feel like it's been enough time to maybe bring that back up.
Yeah, that's a good point. We talked about this a little bit last time and maybe having Gene come in and give us kind of an update on sort of what PAC security has been doing. The anecdotal stuff, was a lot of community support for it, but maybe we need to ask for more detail, like some data or report. Okay.
And I'm not taking a position one way or the other.
Yeah, it's good to check. Yeah, thank you. Other items from the floor?
One, maybe second one.
Hear you.
The Trinidad Bed and Breakfast is facing foreclosure. My wife was underpaying mortgage the entire time we lived here, Alfred, office chapter 11. March 10th, the property goes up to auction for one beneficial sale. That time. Last August last year, probably last year, there was 16,000. Underpaid mortgage, and it was too great to reorganize. I mean, yeah, I talked to a loaner at length. It's too far north. That big of a breakfast, as you know, is. So. It's not.
Okay, take your time, Tyler.
Breakfast to the community. Share it with everybody. Yeah. My husband Mike was an asshole at times. Bring Chris. It's just over. I have to tell everybody. It's over. Thanks so much adversity. Because I think with the lighthouse occupation, from COVID, from being sued. I carried Mike for the last 10 months of his life. I bathed him. My life in Trinidad. It's something I didn't know. This is over. Refund the guests who are yet to stay. It's not over until it's going to be. A place to land, a place like God friend. I had a year's with a friend. I was very well behaved. Good place. Introduce myself. I'm gonna be living in my SUV at parking lot. And that's what it's gonna be. Asking my community to help. So I don't want on and on. I just don't want.
You're not at all. And Tyler, the courage that it takes to stand up and
talk about it.
Yeah.
Get this. It's over.
Yeah. So this community is tight knit, and I think
Well, no,
we should
I'm gonna
talk.
be home.
Maybe,
That's the way it's gonna be.
yeah, we should talk offline a little bit, maybe either during this meeting or after, with maybe Joe and I and you a little bit about what the city.
Upset that there's a lawyer that sued Mike in the room right now.
Like, I know that's been a
Just a coincidence.
point of contention.
And all the-
Yeah. But I think we are aware, at least Joe and I are aware of this situation. I know the rest of the community isn't, and is probably very shocked and surprised by this news. So, yeah. And I think we can talk about ways, maybe as a community, how can we help? And
$1.4 million.
yeah,
That's what we'll say.
that might be hard. The city has we certainly, unfortunately, the city is, it's kind of a.
I tried read.
Doesn't have a huge
I tried everything. Cannot do chapter 13. The promissory after 5 years is too great. Plus, it's town. There's no one that they don't want.
If anyone has some ideas for Tyler, you know where to find him, and yeah, he'll be here for a little bit. You got things to do. Okay, so you know where
I
to
know my
find him.
rights is that I know.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to remove me By then I will be ready to leave.
Okay.
That's happened. Y'all understand that Trinidad Bay Bed and Breakfast. It's over. For those of the people that wanted it to fail. Change yourself. You know who you are.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Yes, any other items from the floor or comments?
Been a discussion about the crosswalk down on.
Yes, and we're gonna talk about that tonight too.
Okay, I think that those signs are great. I think they could be better on the corner of West and Trinity Street. Because I walk the entire town every day. And the only time I've been afraid going and been scared is going across that particular crosswalk. Because people can't see you because people have parked on both sides of the road and they don't see you.
And I always hate to do this, but I have to put the comments about the specific agenda item with that agenda item.
Okay.
There's going to be a lot of discussion about this
Yeah,
topic.
so we're gonna get into,
Yeah,
we're gonna get into a larger discussion about it, and we're gonna remember your public comment that you just made, and you can add to it as well when we get to it. And this is still, any items from the floor that don't relate to tonight's agenda. But we will be moving right along. We're gonna get there very soon here. Okay, so the next thing, I think that's it for items from the floor. Thank you, everyone, for your understanding and kindness. Next up is the tonight's consent agenda. Oh, pardon me. Richard Johnson, go ahead, Richard.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just trying to wave to get your attention. Two things real fast. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, the sound tonight is very, very bad, very below. It's unfortunately, I couldn't hear any of the public speakers at all. As I said, two items very quickly. The first item is that the street light at the library in Saunders Park is not operating. And that's a real safety issue. That's a very, very dark area. And I would hope that we can figure out who's responsible for making that work again. I don't know if it's PG&E or the city, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. The second item is a little bit longer, but I'll be brief. I think based on where we are in our current situation, I think it might be useful to have a public discussion on annexation. I'm not necessarily advocating one way or the other, but I think it would be very useful to have a discussion on what the pros and cons are, the process. The mayor indicated tonight that there was some information about her attending LAFCO meetings, and they're an organization that's very much involved in that. But I just feel like it might be useful to have that information or bring it to the public so that we can all understand what can and cannot be done and what the ramifications are of it and whether or not it makes sense for specific areas of the greater Trinidad area. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Did you want to respond?
I can hear. I just want you to know that we conducted a streetlight survey 2 weeks ago. We were aware of that light at the library. I talked to the PG&E rep this week. So there were 4 or 5 lights that were on that list, and I expect to have her check back in with me this week or early next week to tell me when to expect those lights to be repaired. So
Great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
On annexation, I left out, and what they're gonna do is probably in the next 6 months or so, an educational presentation that will be open to the public. That would be more about, what is annexation, what are the pros and cons, what's involved, that kind of thing. So there's no plans to annex anything at the moment, but we want to educate us all, especially the council, on what's involved. So thanks, Richard. I think we'll get that scheduled in the next, 3 to 6 months or so.
Would they be coming here?
Yeah, they would come here and present in potentially a special meeting, but it could be a regular meeting, depending on how long it takes.
Probably April, I would guess, and it'd probably be in a regular meeting there.
All right, other public comments not related to tonight's agenda.
Guys, somebody came to me on Sunday and said that there are some sinkholes off the bluff trail that are fairly large, about 5 feet and 10 feet deep. Dog fell into them. But we kind of went off trail. I guess there's that, when you're going up towards Underwood, you go past, you can kind of go into the brush there. There's a little bit of a trail that's evident. If you walk down there, there's pretty significant sinkholes. And the question that sort of raises for me is, we've had slides on Van Wyck, we've had drops out on the bluff. I've also heard talk from people on the planning commission and in town that there's been conversation about, as this is progressing, that there might be a need to turn Edwards, Hector, Trinity, and that street from the eatery into a one-way loop. I just feel like if we are facing erosion, that this conversation we had very publicly and the community is involved, because obviously if there are people on that side, and if the hillside is eroding, I think it's a good thing to start talking about as soon as possible.
Can I just ask for a bit more information on where that's at?
Well, so there's that trail that comes down from Underwood down towards the bluff.
Yeah.
If you make a right, and you're kind of heading towards the split in the trail, there is a way for you to kind of, or maybe it's right actually there's kind of like a little landing, and you can kind of go down in the bluff in the brush. And I think people go down there too. I don't know, your hands like that. So this is just a.
All right, we'll check it out. Thank you for the heads up.
You're welcome.
Okay, other items from the floor? Thank you. I'm trying to keep,
Just a point of order. My name is Janine Volkmeyer. I live at 393 North Mistaken Drive. And I've noticed over the years that generally when people come up to this podium, they do say their name, their address. And I think it's helpful because not everybody knows everybody. So if we can all try to do that, I think even if you think everybody knows you, there might be somebody new who doesn't know. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine, and I'll remember to remind as well. It is optional for people to do that under. Okay, so other items from the floor? All right, then we will move on to tonight's consent agenda. Councilors, I will ask you first if there's anything from the consent agenda that you want to pull or discuss. Okay. Members of the public, any comments about tonight's consent agenda?
Hi, Andrew Davis, 558 Hector. I'm looking at item number 4. Looks like there's another street project plan happening, and I just had a couple questions about it. One was Pierce GHD is in line to be selected again for this project, and I'm curious how that selection process happened. What's the process for determining who that person, that group or people are?
Can you go ahead with your second question as well? We may need to pull this to have that level of discussion, so I need to hear what you're.
Got it. Well, I just was wondering if it was a competitive bid primarily. I also think that in light of the current conversation that's coming up next, I don't want to dive into those comments, But in light of that, I do believe GHD should, any contracts with GHD should be paused. I think this, the council should highly consider that. Only because it appears that there is a very strong difference of opinion amongst many people in town about the level of safety needed and what that actually means for the town. And I don't know that GHD is the best representative to do that. So that's just my take on it. So if you have answers, that's great. If not, then.
It's more of a point of order thing. Thank you. The question is, do I need to pull this item to answer questions? I think that the first question about the bid process, probably not. So if we have an answer, we can answer Andrew now, and if not, we can get back to you later.
I can answer that, Mayor.
Okay.
This was done before my time, but in general, GHD is our city engineer. They act as our city engineer since we don't have a public works department. And as a part of that, they are our engineering division that performs this type of work. So work that would normally be performed by a city engineering department is performed by GHD as a city engineer.
Do we have an ongoing contract with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if we want to get into that, which we can, at some point, we need to agendize it or pull it to go deeper on it. But hopefully that answers your question for now. And
it answers the first question, but I guess like some sort of a response on the second part, whatever that response is.
Yeah, well, the second part was, okay.
Second part again.
Is that it appears that there's a strong disagreement with the community and GHD's stance on certain road design situations, and approving another contract with them or another expenditure with them at this time doesn't seem prudent, considering that we seem to be at odds in terms of their design opinions and what many of the community think.
I would say that just in terms of design, engineering design and engineering principles and engineering practices, GHD is following the professional practices that they're credentialed by the state of California to perform. So it is not likely you would get a different result with a different.
I actually disagree with you on that,
okay.
which is fine, but I just to point out why, I actually have a reason for that. Mayor, stop me if I'm bleeding too much into the other item.
To go with this.
But in researching the things on Edwards, it is very much we are in a very much an engineering judgment area. The guidance on that sort of street is very much an engineering judgment area, which means that if you talk to another engineer, reasonable people can disagree. And what I'm seeing, again, in my opinion, is that we're seeing someone who is putting things in their professional judgment is just a little bit too, I'm not saying they're doing anything, but their professional judgment is a little too cautious for what I believe the town would like to see.
Sure, and we can disagree, but in my 20 years in public works, I would say that they are what you would expect to design for a roadway. In any kind of a design for a roadway, that's what you would get as a typical design. There are rules and practices that they follow that are special and required by them, and because they take tests and get credentialed by the state, they have their engineering judgment is allowed to be used as a part of their decision-making process. So not likely that we would get a different decision. I think we probably could do a different path to helping make better decisions going forward with the community involvement. I don't think you would get a different outcome with a different engineering firm based on the same set of conditions that we have on Edwards.
That's, no, yes.
I don't agree with the thing of what Joe just said.
Point of order, I'm going to bring point of order here because this is, yes, so people online can't hear, but this is why I was concerned, because we're getting into.
I was trying to keep it separate. I was trying to address specifically this.
I'm not saying that you did that. I'm saying that this is how conversations evolve. And so thank you for bearing with me as I try to kind of manage the meeting. And we are going to talk about that more in that topic, Andrew. So we now know how we select it, and then now we're going to, when we get to that agenda, and we'll get in deeper.
So in other words, you're not going to
agreements, but we also need to see where we end up with that agenda item as well. And right, and
well, I think that's why I was suggesting that you put a pause on this particular subject, because
I see
we are in the middle of a very contentious discussion that involves this group, and we're about to approve getting back into bed with them.
I see what you're saying.
I just think that would be prudent to put a pause on that and
Okay.
wait for the further discussions to play.
I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you for that. And then I'm going to bring it back to the council. Are there any counselors then who want to pull that item at approval for the GHD task order for step funded road rehab project? Pull it for discussion. Are there any counselors that want to do that?
No, I don't. I'd like to say why I don't.
Okay.
Because listening to Andrew, it seems to me there's a cultural or aesthetic sensibility difference with GHD perhaps, but not necessarily. I see no reason to say that there's anything technical such that another company would do better.
I'm just gonna wait.
So for
And I
that,
may not go back and forth yet until we, yeah,
for that reason, I would vote no, not pull. I don't.
okay. Okay, so no counselors at this point want to pull this. I had a question about it. My question was when this work was going to be done, because I feel like, so I guess I'm debating about pulling it because I do want to have the bulk of that discussion further on where we can really get into the details. Are we going to be looking at this one more time, or is this the final approval? Joe and Gabe, if the council goes ahead with consent, is this?
I think this gets them into the plan specs and engineering portion of the project, so there will be additional time, but they will be developing plan specs and engineering for this project.
Okay.
That's what this task order.
And I'm not keen to pull it either then, because I think we're going to have another look at it. And I also, my only question about it was when this work would be done, because we've done so much construction lately in the summertime. And I guess my more general comment is that the feedback I get from the public is, from the community, is it's just been a lot in the summertime.
That's construction season there.
Yeah, I know exactly. Exactly.
Pavers can pave, like there's conditions that are kind of.
We've just been doing a lot of big projects. So anyway, that was one thing. So I don't see the council pulling this, Andrew, so we're going to wait for the discussion further on, and you'll be.
I just had 2 comments on what just happened, if I'm allowed, if that's okay. First, just to be clear, because that's real money going out the door that you're now approving. I just, you're stepping into the process before we really decided if the community has an opportunity to weigh in based on the way the further conversation goes. I feel like that's inappropriate, if that's what you guys want to do. Yeah. Second, Katie, I actually strongly disagree with what you said. It's not, there is an aspect of what you're saying that's correct, but what I'm up here to say is that digging into the technical guidance on this subject, there are differences that could be done on a technical level that you could get a different answer. And I feel like what we're seeing is a very technical presentation given to us. And that doesn't mean that another engineer might not disagree on a technical level. So I want to be very clear that what you said is not what I was presenting.
Thank you. All right.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. And all those in favor? Aye. The consent agenda for tonight is approved, and we're going to go on to item number 1 on our regularly scheduled agenda, which is Proclamation 2025-01, acknowledging the public service of our former mayor of the city, former mayor, former city manager, former city manager, Eli Nafa. So Eli, if you wouldn't mind standing at the podium, we would like to recognize your service to the city of Trinidad with a proclamation of appreciation. Whereas this Trinidad city manager acts as the chief executive officer of the city and is selected by the city council. Whereas Eli Nafa recently celebrated his 35th anniversary working in city government, beginning his career as an intern for the city of La Mirada, California, and has also been an associate professor at College of the Redwoods for the past 15 years. Whereas Eli Naffa was selected by the council as city manager in March of 2019 and served at the city of Trinidad through the end of 2024. And whereas Eli, over the past 5.5 years, helped the city navigate its way through the pandemic and oversaw stormwater and water provisioning projects, trail-related projects, coastal plans, and program updates, grant acquisition, animal control and law enforcement agreements, installation of a new city website, roadwork, repaving projects, ordinance revisions, and climate action planning, along with myriad other duties. Whereas in his retirement, Eli will continue to teach at the College of the Redwoods, providing consulting services to municipalities and to hopefully travel the world. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that the city of Trinidad congratulates and thanks Eli for his dedicated service to the citizens of Trinidad and to the future well-being of the community. And this is passed unanimously by the council. All those in favor, I believe. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Eli, for all the hard work over the last 5 years.
About the party tomorrow.
Yeah,
isn't
tomorrow
it?
from noon to 2, we're doing a little
Yeah.
potluck here for Eli. You're
Come
welcome
by
to
and-
join us.
Raise a toast and hello, Sunday, Eli, and the rest of us.
Yeah,
It'd be fun.
hear the stories.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I've worked in 8 cities and this is the first one that's given me a proclamation, so it's very much appreciated. And it's my favorite city of all because it is such a beautiful, picturesque city that gets so many tourists because it is special. So it'll always remain special for me and thank you for that honor.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on tonight's agenda is the continued discussion decision regarding the Cycle 10 HSIP project. And this is reviewing the pedestrian safety improvements on Edwards. And Josh Wolf is here to get us started. I believe, or did staff want to lead into that? Okay, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Saul. Good evening, Mayor.
Hello.
Nice to see everyone again. Dave's going to queue up a brief presentation for us. And I will try to keep it brief because there's a lot of public comment and we'll be select the questions as well. All right, so again, I'm Josh Wolf, I'm the city's contract city engineer and also an engineer GHG here to talk about the Edward Street crosswalk improvements that are related as part of the city's Cycle 10 HSIP project. Excellent. So I want to do just a very brief project history. We did try to convey a lot of information to staff report on a lot of the various projects and decisions that have been made over the years that have really led to this current project. Stepping back, big picture, I want to convey that the city's really been actively working for over a decade on pedestrian and connectivity improvements on Edward Street. Edward Street, again, is really the only pedestrian connection from Upper Trinidad or downtown Trinidad to the lower Harbor Beach area. A lot of this started back in 2010 with the failure of the Bandwidth Trail. During the studies and the efforts the city's made at that time to identify some potential improvements to the Bandwidth Trail and connectivity, became very evident that the city really lacked a safe and accessible route between Upper Trinidad and the beach and harbor. So there's a series of projects over the years, but ultimately it's led us to this HSIP Cycle 10 project, which was awarded 21. where the city awarded around $800,000 for various safety improvements in town. Component of that, obviously, was some improvements on Edward Street. Go next slide. So there was actually 3 separate components to each project. There was a set aside for guardrail upgrades, striping upgrades, and then the pedestrian crossing enhancements. There were 3 different locations that were identified for pedestrian crossing enhancements. There was Main Street in View, Edward Street at Galindo, and Edward Street at Hector. The improvements generally included new or enhanced crosswalk markings, curb ramps, fold-outs, signage and striping enhancements, and rectangular rapid flashing beacons or RRFBs. I really focus on that last location here, the Edward Street and Hector Street, because that seems to be the most contentious at this point. Next slide. So just a brief overview on RFBs. I know we talked about this at last meeting, and I think most people are familiar with them at this point, but they are a pedestrian activated safety device used at crosswalks to enhance visibility and increase driver awareness. They're effective at crosswalks where there's, crosswalks on uncontrolled lanes and intersections. So where there's no stop signs and traffic wouldn't normally stop. They've been proven to increase driver yielding rates as high as 98%. That's
Where? Okay, just
98%, and they can reduce collisions involving pedestrian crosswalks by 47%. Essentially, they're proven low-cost treatments to improve pedestrian crossing safety. So the graphic here, again, this is one I think we showed at last meeting. Shows an area of the Trinidad area. They're dark blue lines or solid lines over the existing sidewalks and crosswalks in town. The dashed blue lines, those are shared facilities. So typically it's a wide shoulder areas where pedestrians utilize the area, but it's not necessarily a dedicated facility. And yellow there is the Edwards and Hector crosswalk. What this really showing is that this is a really critical component of the city's non-motorized pedestrian network in town. It's actually the only connection between Upper Trinidad or downtown Trinidad and the Lower Harbor area. And you know, Edward Street is one of the busiest roads in town, and there's certainly a mix of traffic, including local traffic, commercial, visitors, and tourist traffic as well. This looks like Edwards is also uncontrolled, meaning there's no stop sign on Hector Street, so vehicles do not stop there. Also has limited lighting. There is a street light in the vicinity, it's around 90 feet just to the west, closer to the Van Wyck intersection. But it is a fairly dark intersection. And then there's a couple other considerations that came into play. First one listed here, the presence of vulnerable users. This really came about during the early Van Wyck studies when we were doing outreach as part of the grant applications. There's some communication with stakeholders, including the Trinidad Elementary School. And at the time, their superintendent principal made it very clear that these improvements were important to them, that they often use. At the time, Van Wyck Trail and the crossings in order to get down to Harbor, also to the marina. And so hence the crossing here, Hector, and Edwards is what down to identified during times. The last item here is that there are obviously beautiful coastal views in the area. There's limited parking, and it's often very congested area, especially during the summer tourist season. You get a lot of people there looking for places to park, wondering where they're going to go, distracted by the views. So all this really contributes to driving. So obviously there's been a lot of public feedback received since the crossings were installed back in December. Certainly some has been in support and some has been against. I've done my best just to summarize a few of the common themes that I saw. So as far as comments and support, there was an appreciation for the sign systems and their safety enhancements, especially for the more vulnerable users, such as children and those with disabilities. A commenter noticed that they had observed that there's a notable increase in driver building times to themselves, pedestrians and crosswalks, where historically they would have to wait a while. There would be a broad gap in traffic before they felt safe to cross. Now they're able to push the button and cars react very quickly and crosswalk slowly cross. One commenter also noted that the signs also show visitors to the area where it's safe to cross. So some sort of a guide sign, call it, where they can see the guide sign. Whether they should walk down the intersection, cross Edwards, for example. Ever instead of crossing up that. Push the slow down, keep your eyes on the road. For pedestrians. And there was a number of comments against as well. Again, tried to summarize these the best I could. First one, the sign systems are over-designed and not necessary. But there's been no history of accidents on Edward Street, so essentially they were unwarranted. Slightly contrary to the Trinidad fishing village or vibe, and that they obstruct or degrade the coastal views. Signs also don't conform to the city's own sign ordinance or the general plan, and that the public was not aware of the plan signs. I don't plan to respond to these to have to answer questions later on. So based on the feedback that we received, we have spent some time going back to see if there are some potential options to make modifications to the systems that have been installed. Again, focusing on Edward Street and Hector Street, with the underlying goal of maintaining the original intent of the safety enhancements. So there's been three different options identified, and I'll walk through each one of these in a little bit more detail. But the first one is to replace the side panels with smaller size panels. The second one is to lower the sign on the bluff side or ocean side, and then to relocate the sign on the Hector Street corner further back from the roadway, try to tuck it in a little bit. And the third option is to replace the solar panel system. You can control cabinets with a more slimmer profile system. I'll show you that as well. So option one again is to replace the signs with smaller sign panels. So the existing signs are 30 by 30. This is the size of these signs that you'd see probably in 5+% of all crossings. You probably never see something bigger is on a highway. And so often you will see some smaller signs. NHTCD, or which is the design guidance for this traffic control devices in California, recommends 30 by 30, but it does provide the ability to go down as far as 24 by 24 moves in engineering judgment. The situation you feel that is warranted and you're going to reduce it to 24 by 24. With that, we should be able to.
Is that what we're seeing, 24 by 24?
Yeah, so these graphics, I did do my best to try to give you a graphical depiction of what they look like. So these are ever so slightly reducing the image. It's out there now, 30 by 30, so just a little bit small. So with the smaller panel, we could lower the solar panel system on top by around 8 inches. With this, we recommend extending the curb paint up to, it should be 20 feet from the crossing. That's actually a brand new law in California effective as of January 1st. So it's something we should really consider for all crossings in the city, but for this, we can certainly for
I'm sorry, that's not the law.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, that's not the law. The law
Andrew,
is we are exempt as a town from that. I'm sorry, I just can't stand up there and say stuff that's wrong.
promise you're gonna have a chance. And just take a note and we will get to it. And if you disagree, I want to hear you.
It's not a disagreement, it's factually incorrect what he's saying.
So the council needs to, we need to finish hearing, listening to Josh, and then the council needs to have a discussion. And we have read all of the public comments. I've read it multiple times. And so we really want to hear what you have to say. We really, but I need to, we need to follow the decorum, please. Josh, please continue.
Sure. So the estimated cost for this, we put it about $5,000. We all the estimated costs you see here, I think, are conservatively high, but we want to give you something. They are also different than what was included in the staff report because we have had some recent conversations with the contractor trying to understand what the cost may be. The original cost on the staff report were my best guess, but after ongoing conversations, they think it might be able to present a higher cost to them.
I do have some questions about the cost, but I want to let you finish and then let the council kind of all ask questions before I kind of get
a few more slides
to the crux of some of them.
Second option here is to lower and relocate signs. So with this one on the left side, we would actually lower the sign by 2 feet. On the Hector side, we would shift the actual sign system behind the sidewalk. So currently it's located in the curb ramp. So we actually push it behind the sidewalk further away from the road, try to tuck it in. That would have to have a new pedestrian push button assembly, which is a separate short post, which is located, will be located where the sign is now. There would be interconnecting wiring between the two systems that have been installed as part of that. And we'd also recommend extending the red curtain to 30 feet in this case, and that's because we're pushing the signs further away from the road. They can have less visible. There's parking to constructed. The estimate for this is around $3,000 to lower the sign system on the left side, and around $15,000 to move the sign on the other side and add a pedestrian push button assembly. The third option is to replace the solar panel system in the control cabinet. So with this one, we replace the actual top of the pole mounted system. Currently, it's a separate solar panel, a separate control panel. So this will be combined with an integrated, or to be replaced with an integrated sign and panel system. So much slimmer profile system. With that, it looks like we can lower the actual top of the solar panels by about a foot, 12 inches. The cost for this is $10,000, I think, for both sides of the intersection with the same treatment.
Do I understand you correctly? You're taking off that square panel on the top and locating it elsewhere?
No, so right, can you go to the previous slide and then look at the top, even on the right side above the yellow sign, you see there's a square box and then there's a solar panel above it.
Yeah.
So those are two separate systems. So then go to the next slide. And the picture, it's a single system, so it's much like the one that's out in front of Town Hall here. It doesn't have a separate control panel, but it's got a thicker solar panel system because they packed everything into one box. So any combination of these could be included. So we did all three of the suggestions together. Cost of around up to $33,000, I would say. Look on the right side or the left side. We estimated it'd be around a 44-inch reduction in the total height of the sign, so nearly 4 feet. On the Hector side, it'd be about a 20-inch reduction, plus the signs would be tucked in against the hill.
I think you just answered my question, which was how much was it? It was an additive for option 1, 2, and 3, and the answer is yes. And then you didn't look at any options that changed the sizing. This is just for the signs on Hector.
Yeah, this is
not just the ones up above, not the ones down by.
Yeah. The costs here are only for the intersection. Certainly, some of these treatments we could talk about them for other intersections. We want to look at and see what makes sense there. Again, I thought this was the primary focus. So these are the costs. So I wanted to just, at least try to give you a graphical depiction of what this could look like. So I did my best to just draw on here, give you an idea of the difference. And it's hard to see in this image. But on the right side, you can see the system would be, more or less in the same location, but again around 40. So just come down, and then left side where the sign is tucked further back on behind the sidewalk, along with the separate assembly.
And the little thing on the top is still the solar panel. That could conceivably come off as well.
No, you still have a solar panel, but it would be a single system. You wouldn't have the control panel. So you wouldn't have the cube, the box. You just have a thicker control panel. Or the thicker solar panel.
Can you remove the solar panel and control box altogether?
Not if you're going to maintain your system. Let's go to a electrified system, so EGD power. Much more costly because you're looking at a new electrical power draw and you have to wiring to both sides. But no longer a wired system.
Please ask questions, council. There was some discussion last time about the idea of putting lights in the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Did you investigate that?
I apologize, I did not investigate that any further. That again, that could be an option. It was something we could look at. It would still need power though. So it's not.
And it would still need signs.
You still need signs, yeah. Yes, you would not do a treatment like that without the signs, absolutely. It's an enhancement to the sign system. You don't do it without the signs.
I didn't know that when I suggested it. I thought the signs could come out. I didn't know that by state law, you would still have to have the signs.
How much would it be to remove all 4 signs and then relocate them to, approved site that the community could approve later?
Good question. My best guess is it would be less than 10,000. I don't know the exact number, 5 to 10,000 dollars.
To remove them.
Yeah.
To relocate them, I think is what you're asking.
To-
Find another intersection in town.
Right, yeah.
Locate them there, yeah.
Good question. I mean,
I'm clear with that.
well, no, I was just, I had kind of looked through the options and, Jack is right. That one option is removing all of the signs. Another option is removing one set. Another option is keep it exactly as is. Another option is we resize them and keep them. I had a couple, I'll just say where I was thinking, and then I'd love to hear what the other counselors think, and then we'll get some public comment. We have, as I mentioned, read a lot of public comments, so we will get to that, but I think we're kind of, have a pretty good idea of what the sentiment is on both sides of this issue.
Yeah, and this last slide just provides you a summary of the 3 options I talked about, but again, I also want to list a couple options we were talking about last time, which were moving the sign system altogether. Or just removing the RRFB system off of the signs. Again, I don't recommend these. These are not recommended because they do not maintain the original intended safety enhancements of the project for the crosswalk. So,
and just to be clear, we can't just remove. I think we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that we can't just remove the signs and leave the crosswalks. Like, we can't just take out signs and leave the markings on the crosswalk.
why not?
By state law, correct?
No, that's not actually correct. You could.
I'm just asking the question, you guys.
The signs and lights are not required, nor is the crosswalk markings. These are all safety enhancements to make the crossing safer.
Okay,
But
so we could
you could leave the markings.
You could take it all out or leave it. I would not advise you doing it.
Okay, yeah, I think we're just looking at what are all of the options, and as everyone read in the packet, there is the indemnification issue. So the city, we need to look at design indemnity, having an engineer recommend a design, and then our adopting that then has given us some legal indemnification.
Immunity is the word, not indemnification. This is design.
I asked last time, and I'm going to ask again. There's no way we can just put stop sign. There is a stop sign coming from Hector onto Edwards. We couldn't put a 4-way stop or 3-way.
It's possible, but there are laws in California that regulate new stop signs being installed. And so you have to go through a warranty analysis to determine if it's actually warranted. And I don't believe, in my opinion,
You don't think it would fly, but it is a possibility.
It's possible, but I don't think it would pass the warrants. Yeah.
And then there would be stop signs there, so then people might feel that was a disruption of the view shed.
But they're so much smaller and lower.
They are, although with the lowering of the, that is actually a good question. With the lowering that is possible, how does that relate to a stop sign height? Is it any idea?
Signs are typically, if they're in an area where pedestrians can walk, they need to be around 7 foot clear, so people can get right on. On the plus side, we're able to recommend or suggest you can lower that sign because it's not in a pedestrian area, it's behind the curb, on the bluff of people going out. It depends on the location.
I see. Okay.
5 foot is usually the minimum clearance. That's 5 to 7 feet.
I guess I also have a question, at the crosswalk in front of this school, I have a picture of just some signs that are on the center of the roadway to encourage people to slow down.
So would that be an option to put those in?
Yes, I saw public comment on that one actually, and I said it on my head that the challenge with it out here, there's bulb outs on each side. Our concern is if you put it out there, especially since we have now a pedestrian shoulder on one side, the cars are going to start to kind of weave around it to avoid it because it's already a somewhat narrow lane.
Yeah.
So it might push them into an area that's not necessarily protected like out here. So, I'll say it's not a question, but I always go to what are the potential downfalls of the system like that.
Okay.
And I think someone referenced that like Hopland has them on 101 and one of the comments, so I did go and look at Street View. It's a totally different situation. They have a two-way left turn lane in the middle of the road. And so those signs are actually offset into the center median a bit, or they don't take it. It's a little narrower. So it could be an improvement, but it could also, have some unintended consequences.
Thoughts? I want to hear public comment. I have read all the comments. I feel like I'm a little bit frustrated because we spent a lot of time and energy on this and we thought it was the right thing to do for public safety. And 5 years ago or so, when I was on the planning commission, I suggested we come up with a master plan for signage for the city because there is such a sentiment of being very careful about, view shed and those types of things. And, we haven't been able to do that, but there are so many signs that are like individual signs that could be combined and you could reduce the footprint and so forth. And as I look at these signs on Edwards, I'll be honest with you, we see, pictures in here and so forth, but when we go out and see it in real life, it's, it didn't, to me personally, fit with, kind of how I view that area and so forth. And so getting them into a smaller footprint, I'm looking for a win-win here because when I hear from the principal of the elementary school, for example, that she, the kids walk down there and they really appreciate having a crosswalk. So, the thoughts that have occurred to me, and I'd be interested in getting your feedback and the public's feedback is, one option is resize them and keep them for 6 to 9 months through the busy season and see how we feel. See if we think it's made a big difference. If it's still driving us crazy, then, we revisit it. So one option was kind of resize them, keep them temporarily, just knowing we're going to revisit this. Another was, in my mind, was potentially we only need one set and removing. In my mind, I could see removing the one up above, the one on Hector. But I like the idea personally of keeping the one on Galindo because I think that's where the kids come down. They go to the Marine Lab and they cross the street down there. And it's also, I think it's a good compromise to have one set. We could resize those. So anyway, I'm just giving my opinion as a couple of ideas that we might float. And with that, unless there are other questions from the council for Josh, I'm going to go ahead and open to public comment. Or if anybody else has a proposal they want to kind of float with the public.
I have a couple of questions for Josh. And
please.
So I ended up putting quite a bit of time, looking into the background and researching this myself, Josh. And one of the things I found using the internet, you could pass that over to Josh. I've got a copy for the other members of the council if you want to pass those down. Look at that. And that's just something I found on the federal website. U.S. Department of Transportation talks about the failing beacons, the flashing beacons. As you can see there, they suggest that one of the considerations that cities should think about before they put those up is that to reserve the use of RRFBs for locations with significant pedestrian safety issues, as overuse of RRFB treatments may diminish their effectiveness. I guess they're saying, if you put up too many of them, people won't pay as much attention to them. So I'm wondering, are you familiar with that, with the federal viewpoint on that?
I am. I believe my staff report actually referenced this document too. So there's a link to it in the staff report.
Okay.
So yes,
And I guess my other question, I mean, I get that having them mix the sidewalks safer, but I guess, you know, what was it about, you know, having just a sidewalk would, it doesn't create a dangerous condition, did it? I mean, even before, when we didn't even have crosswalks there, do you think it created an actually dangerous road condition?
you're asking if I think the intersection prior to the improvements was dangerous?
Yeah.
It's a tough question to answer. I'll tell you, it was not as safe as it is today, just because something may be, you know, dangerous. Or certainly we still look for opportunities to make things safer. It's much like saying just because it wasn't tally in that intersection doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. We still want to do what we can to prevent future fatalities.
So, I guess that's the only, well, would your firm be interested in giving a different opinion? Do you think you could give an engineering opinion that we didn't need the flashing signs to go with the crosswalks? And I would be looking at things like the lack of prior accident here, history, the good site, distance, you know, coming up and so forth.
I did confer with a colleague of mine on this, several of them actually. That's their opinion on it. And explained in a situation that, you know, it's a long time project. There was recommendations made, suggestions, council funding was awarded. We made the case for funding. The project was approved. I've been up to this council multiple times, telling you why we suggested the improvements and justifying the improvements. For us to walk that back now, anyone else poke holes in the situations. It would be a field day for another engineer. A lawsuit and told us liable or be liable based on the history of it. An entirely different situation, in my opinion, if it was never approved and never moved forward. That's not what we're
So
that's my personal opinion, and I'm not an attorney giving you legal advice. I've heard that comment as well.
right. So since you already put the opinion that we should have those, you can't walk it back and describe it.
You know, I think the city can make the decision, but I personally don't want to take liability for backing off on something that we spent so long recommending and designing. It's already been constructed.
So that we would be accepting your risk, basically.
Yeah, so just
I didn't hear that last one.
so in reference to the cost for changing the size and so forth in the placement right now, would that money come out of the current grant?
Or I also want to touch on the last one real quick as well. So I am also bound by the Professional Engineers Act. And I think that's what Joe is alluding to, that I also have a duty of ethics to the safety of the public, and that part of it's, I don't think it would be ethical for me to pull back on a recommendation based on some of the feedback.
And that's,
And I missed your question, so sorry.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the cost you estimated for like moving the signs, making them smaller, changing them around, would that, do you think the state would pay for that?
Oh, yeah, good question. So we have been working with Caltrans over the last week to see if we could secure some additional funding. We were hoping to have an answer before this meeting, although we heard back from them late this afternoon that they have a meeting at 8 a.m. tomorrow to discuss it. We have actually made a formal request to increase the budget in the event that some of these, unfortunately, we don't know the answer.
yes.
No. Go ahead.
No, are you sorry?
I'm done.
Oh, okay. If sidewalks, when you said sidewalk, I thought you were going where I'm interested in. If a sidewalk were on the north side of Edwards from Hector down, that would solve the safety issue, wouldn't it?
thought about that as well, because I know that we talked about that in the long-term plan. I think there's a walkway there, that was crosswalk maybe would be necessary.
Conceivably, if we could find a way to fund the sidewalk, we could leave the signs in place. If we could get on our horse and ride, and not take years to do this. Then that conceivably we could resolve this without being legally exposed or having someone get hurt.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
I think that's a really good point. Sorry.
The graphic earlier saw this is the only connection. So that's a significant crossing. That was no longer the only way pedestrian route to get downtown. And I think
At some point, the sidewalks are going to go in. This may be when we really need to bite the bullet and do it, so that we can resolve the view shed issue and take those signs down and keep the populace safe anyhow.
Yeah, I like that idea, and I had written down sidewalks underlined as well, because in the past, folks we had a lot of resistance to sidewalks in certain parts of town, and yet Edwards would be a great place to do it. And if we had done that, then we might not, we still need a way to get across. That's why I still think maybe one of them down there makes sense for the school kids going down to the harbor and so forth, but maybe we wouldn't have needed both. So if we had a plan to put in a sidewalk, maybe that would be enough.
Yeah, and as far as the Galindo and Edwards crossing, that's certainly one that I would not recommend taking that out. That is a completely different situation given the curvature of the road there. So I think that is absolutely a warranted improvement for the safety of that crossing.
We could reduce the size of it and make it less, or can we not do it there?
I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. If you wanted a slimmer profile there, I'd probably look to reduce the solar panel system on top and make it.
Okay, other comments from the council before?
I wanted to share just a couple of things with my fellow council members here.
This is a council meeting.
So I finally got around to reading the local road safety plan.
Yeah.
Which is one of the springboards for the city getting these kind of lights. I don't know if any of you guys have had a chance to read it, but it was pretty interesting. And one of the first things is right at the end of the executive summary at the front. They mentioned specifically the sensitivity of signs in Trinidad. And that has to be examined very carefully with a circumspect approach. So then it also shows that when they reached out to the community for ideas about how to make things safer, two comments were made about, one about we should have a crosswalk at Hector and Edwards, and one that said we should have one at Galindo. Edwards. And the accident history is also explained from 2016 to 2021. There were 2 traffic accidents in Trinidad, both over at the main entrance into town, Main Street and Patrick's Point Scenic there. So that's just some of the background information that I wanted you guys to know. And also, well, the mayor and I and the city manager spoke with one of the top guys at our insurance carrier recently also about this. And they're very committed to the requirement that there be a paper trail of some kind if we were considering taking the signs down at this point, and suggested that if we had another engineer who could recommend that the signs weren't required, that weren't necessary, that there would be no problem with them continuing to insure us for, anything that happened along that road. And I tried to get him to give us some wiggle room there. And because I personally, the way I read the statute, I think that we could, as the legislative body that's mentioned specifically in the statute, we could show with substantial evidence that, it was a sound decision to take them down. But they, of course, don't want to be out on the edge of the legal frontier, exploring the boundaries and so forth, as I'm sure they want to stick with the conventional interpretations and so forth. So they were pretty conservative about that, understandably. But that was the substance of that discussion. So I just wanted to share that with the members of the public and my colleagues.
Thank you, Bryce.
On the LRST also, the two collisions you referenced, I just want to be clear, those are collisions. You know, it doesn't have a police force, and so often collisions go unreported. I'm not saying there was more in Edwards, I'm just saying those numbers are not necessarily accurate, which is why that document, that process, the LRST process, spent so much time talking to stakeholders, including police, first responders, and others.
There's numbers are conspicuous. Everybody in the whole world can rely on those numbers. Too much for you to start questioning. It's not a
Well, it was a fair point. You brought up a fair point. Point taken.
Okay.
But I've lived here for 40 years, so I know pretty much every time there's a traffic accident.
And I do want to point out too that the council made the decision to move ahead. And so Josh is just revisiting everything that he shared with us. I don't want, Josh to be kind of the person who's, viewed as making the decision here. The council's making the decision. And so you're providing information to us. So I appreciate that. And thank you for, kind of being on the hot seat here. But any other comments for Josh from the council?
I would like to thank him also. It's a good presentation.
Yes.
Gosh, I would like to see like pricing of putting the little flashers in the street, having those small little button, and then little flashers in the street. So then we wouldn't be liable if something ever happened in the future.
Yeah, I could look for that in the signs would have to say though.
We talked about this last time. That's what I was thinking, was that we could just have a little kiosk that turns the light on, and then they would go through the street, which we admitted and we found out was really hard to maintain, I guess, in this climate or something. But then Josh pointed out you still have to have the sign, so it doesn't eliminate the sign.
Yeah, my understanding, TCD is very clear for RFPs. They have to be installed with the sign. Put them up without. I believe the in-road lighting is the same. It's an additional enhancement. It's not the other signage.
Josh, have you any estimate what putting the sidewalk down Edwards would cost?
I don't off the top of my head. I know that during the ATP project, the Van Wyck ATP project, that was one of the options that was looked at. The project was canceled, so I think some of those costs so we can dig them up.
But it would solve our safety issue.
But yeah, the pedestrian connectivity and safety on Edwards, which is still a concern.
I'm not really following that line of reason. Would we then not need the crosswalk?
Well, I think right now you see the yellow, that is the only crossing to connect Upper Trinidad to the harbor. There was a sidewalk on the north side of Edward Street. That essentially a continuation of the sidewalk about part exists between Trinidad and Bedford. But the significance of that crossing is diminished.
If there for convenience sake, but it wouldn't have to be.
Not necessarily a destination on that side of the road. So it's possible the crosswalk.
You'll take the signs down.
Yeah.
Crosswalk can go away.
Take the signs down and put them somewhere else, and put them in storage.
Let's check with other cities. But then there's a.
Well, no, he's saying that that
Right, that's all the sidewalks done. Can we, yeah, so we should talk about whether or not that was in process. That would mitigate any of that.
And sidewalk and Everest,
Said we have a plan to build a sidewalk and we remove the signs. Does that mitigate any kind of design?
It was my understanding that there was money appropriated for sidewalks on that works, and there was some public pushback on that.
We did, yeah, we got a lot of pushback back then.
that proposal was, as I recall, sidewalks on the south side of the woods, and so just property owners. It wasn't public right away, that was concerned over receiving it back to the property. Essentially, the grant ran out of time.
All right, well, so we have some things to think about. Do we want to go ahead and move then to, are we ready to move to public comment then?
I think so.
Okay. All right, thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
We'll now open, thank you for bearing with us as we have this dialogue back and forth. You can kind of see how we're trying to think about this. Please come to the podium if you'd like to help us through this decision making.
Anna Davis, 558 Hector. So I brought stuff for you to hand to. They're just individual pages that all go together, so I need to take a look at it. I'm looking at a lot of data. So the discussion about temporary speed humps took place. Bear with me on this. The overwhelming majority of people in town were opposed. The conversation shifted to the idea of conducting a traffic study, but no one considered the data showing that speed humps rarely slow down motorists. No one acknowledged that there's no federal pedestrian crash data below 25 miles per hour. Instead, the former city manager asked 2 council members to survey Ocean and View streets. They found the majority in favor of installation, so the speed humps went in, based on feelings rather than facts. And even now, you can still drive over the speed humps at 20 miles per hour or faster if you don't mind damaging your suspension. This set a type of precedent in Trinidad. Streets get to decide what happens with their own improvements, with no data required. Last month, I presented the council with a list of names of residents opposed to the 4 lighted crosswalk signs on Hector, Underwood, and Edwards. Since then, 5 more residents have reached out to me with concerns, and there are still more I have yet to speak with. We will not accept the justification that this issue was posted on the website and that if we didn't show up, too bad. You rolled out the red carpet for Ocean and View residents, put up signs effectively telling the rest of us that we weren't welcome to drive down the streets. And frankly, it showed the rest of us a dismissive and disrespectful attitude. This is a rift in our community that is widening, and the more people I speak with who don't live on Ocean and View, the more they talk about why these streets are receiving preferential treatment. The council has already acknowledged that a mistake was made in not properly engaging the community regarding the crosswalk signs. We all know that had residents been properly informed, they would not have supported the signs. So the council is now left with a clear choice: remove the signs or remove the speed humps. In my view, you have forfeited your ability to turn the broader community for support when you undermine the wishes of the larger population to accommodate only the wishes of the residents on Ocean and View. And that's the choice that I think exists. Either the individual streets get to decide what happens, or the community at large gets to do it. But the decision on Ocean and View set that precedent. The residents directly impacted by the 4 crosswalk signs on Edwards want them gone. They were thrilled when we removed the no parking signs, and they are eagerly awaiting further action. Now let's address the improper use of public safety as a justification for these measures. I have brought a spreadsheet from the National Safety Council, and I strongly encourage you to visit their website and spend more time considering their data. Do you know where children are most often killed as pedestrians? In private driveways and garages, not at intersections. Please review the data in the spreadsheet. Using the school and stories of children safely crossing the street as emotional appeals is manipulative and not grounded in the actual risks of safety. Do you know what the chance of us being hit and killed in a pedestrian crash at any intersection in our rural community? It's this 0.0045%, 0.0045%. Right? Because this is 300 pedestrian deaths in rural communities out of 66 million. That's at 66 million people. Installing the signs increases that risk to 0.00065%. That is based, this is why I said where, when The engineer was up because text matters. In rural communities, RFPs only allow a max 30% reduction pedestrian hit rates, right? It's not 98%, it's 30% max. So this doesn't even account for the fact that 75% of these collisions occur at night. And we all know how many people walk around Trinidad at night, almost none, and certainly not children. This is not a victory for public safety, it's a rounding error. I just want to show you this number again. This is how much safer we are. Instead of 45, I don't know pronounce this. It's 20,000% safe. That's what signs. I think the insurance company could let that go. For comparison, the risk of dying from a fall in the entire country of 330 million is 0.5%. Okay, so obviously we have a much greater risk of tripping and falling in town and dying than getting hit in a crosswalk at any time of day. As you may know, I am deeply involved in the community. I recently helped organize the Clam Beach Run, where safety was a top priority for all runners. We took every precaution, including delaying the race by an hour, to ensure everyone's well-being. So believe me when I say that the claim of public safety being a driving force here is not only ridiculous, it's insulting, especially when anyone with any sense knows that the Galindo crosswalk is a dangerous spot because it's located on a blind curve. I certainly hope the schools are planning on taking children across that street, hoping that some blinking lights will help the speeding truck who comes around the corner stop at the right time. It's also deeply frustrating to hear that the minor inconvenience of waiting 5 fewer seconds to cross Edwards justifies ruining views, damaging the town's charm and violating our own ordinances. Above all, I won't stop fighting for the removal of the signs for the sake of the Gwinnett family. I visited their home last week. They're right down the street from us. And those signs loom large in every single window facing the water. They glow at sunset, and every time the light is low, there's no escaping them. The rocks and the bear block from view. The Gwinnetts are cherished members of this community, and it's deeply upsetting that they have been so disrespected. This community is fractured right now, fractured by the inconsiderate installation of signs, by the blatant favoritism shown to Ocean and V Streets, and by the disregard for those of us on Hector, Underwood, and Edwards. These signs were poorly conceived, not properly presented to the community, and are now being dubiously defended. For the sake of community harmony, I urge you to do the right thing and remove them immediately. Not only is this the right thing to do, it will also show a tremendous amount of respect to those of us who feel marginalized by these actions. Thank you.
There are public comments.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Barry. I'm Edwards, and I'm resident of Trinidad. Let me preface my remarks by acknowledging that you are all here out of the goodness of your hearts to serve this community. You're here in limited capacities, and I appreciate the fact that you are spending a lot of your time and energy dealing with very thorny issues. You've dealt with issues of the dog leash rules and the water issue about whether hiking trails should be open or closed, short-term rental disputes. I mean, these are all things you guys have to deal with on a regular basis, and I appreciate that. And now we're kind of here for yet another one, though. The issue of whether or not there needs to be additional signage on Edwards in order to make Edwards safe. Now, safety is an important thing. I think everybody acknowledges that, especially for our children and members of our community that maybe don't feel safe. But these signs are simply too tall and too big and too glow in the dark orange, and they flash at night, and they're unnecessary. I sent to the council last week an email that I think you have all received, I hope you have. And that kind of highlights the 5 points that I think are important, and I'm not going to read them and go verbatim through it because that's not for tonight. But for just the people in this audience who haven't read it, basically, as has been pointed out already by Bryce and others, there have been no actions on Edwards. There have been no reported near misses. There's been nobody, I think we just heard it tonight from the engineer, that says Edwards without these signs is unsafe. There's been no traffic study done to show that this is an unsafe street without the signs. Simply taking the signs down doesn't then make the street unsafe. The second point is, and it's also been raised again, is Government Code 830.6. The design immunity that public entities enjoy when they follow the rules and they have an engineer and a reasonable plan, and it's adopted by discretionary exercising authority at a municipality, design immunity. So there will be design immunity for that street, whether these signs are up or down. So that's really not an issue. The fear that I think people are sensing that we could get sued, if something that isn't gonna happen. And I would defer even to the lawyer over there, who could probably explain that as well. Thirdly, the signs, by just a plain reading of them, violates our own ordinances. They're too big, they're too tall, they're too everything. And I've yet to hear constructively how somehow the signs that the city puts up are immune from their own regulations. If I were to try to put a sign like that in my house, it wouldn't get very far. It'd be taken down immediately. I guess lastly, I'm here to hear alternatives. And I'm a little bit frustrated because we have not heard really any alternatives from the staff report that we received that basically was written by Josh, that simply said, well, what we have is what we have, and that's all I can recommend. Oh yeah, we can tweak it a little bit. We can make it 6 inches shorter or 12 inches if we put it on the other side. But heck, we're not getting rid of the bright orange thing, and we're certainly not going to get rid of the flashing lights. And that's not helpful. That's not constructive for this organization. We need alternatives. I mean, if I were to do a simple show of how many people are in favor of this and how many people are against it, I added up the number of people who wrote in today. And I think you probably did too, maybe you didn't. But Gabe sent it around, and as of this morning, there were 10 letters that were supporting of removing these things and 4 against. And the 10 letters represented 13 voices and the 4 letters represented 5 voices. I mean, that's what, 2 to 1, 3 to 1. And at the prior meeting, there were only 2 people who, I mean, there were like 6 or 7 people who spoke about, let's get rid of these things. Nobody arrived here and said, yeah, let's keep them. I really think we need to keep them. I mean, if you just look at where we're all going with this, the community does not need these. And we're not getting any assistance from the engineering side here. I am a lawyer, as you can probably guess from the way I've been speaking. I've hired any number of engineers in lawsuits exactly like this, where people, potential lawsuits for somebody were to get her attorney. And the engineers are all over the board on what is reasonable under the circumstances. I don't think it's fair for the engineer today to say this is it and this can only be it, and we have to stick with this. I think if we were to take a step back, get assistance from a second opinion as to what else could be done there besides these large signs, smaller signs, the signs with the lights in the pavement, I think that would be very helpful. Because I don't think we're in a position today to make any real decisions. At least if I was sitting in the shoes, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I don't think we have enough information. I asked all this information from some communications with the staff the last 23 weeks. We need this information for this meeting, and all we got was the 4-page staff report written by Josh, who's not necessarily independent. I mean, this is his design that's being critiqued here, and he's wary of stepping off of where he's already staked his turf. I understand that, but I don't think we're stuck with that. And I guess my last point, and I know I'm going on, is those the pictures that Josh showed at the last meeting that showed kind of in real world, where they're at. And he called them, Chuck, what was the term you used? Picture simulations, picture simulations. When he showed those at the last meeting in January, a month ago, I said to myself, I've never seen those before. And so I went back and I watched that part of the video recording. And just said, well, those had been presented in the March 2023 meeting that you were at. I was not at. And I said, I didn't see them there because I went back, so I looked at the March 14th, 2023. But his report and those pictures are not in the file. They are certainly not in the documents package that we all received. So nobody, going into the meeting, nobody knew this was going to be presented. And even till today, it's not in there. I had to go back and watch the 2-hour, 20-minute recording of the October 14th, 2023 meeting to even see them for the first time. And so and I will say, that is the one and only time they have ever been shown to you, the city council, or to me, the residents. Okay, that was what, March of 23. They're not at the April meeting, not the May meeting, not the June, July, September, October, November. And then what happens in December? They sign the contract with the design drawings already completed. We never saw the final set of drawings that were supposedly what it was going to be. And so when people say, well, you kind of slept on your rights, you guys didn't voice an objection, we were never told until they went up. And that's why we're now here today. And I apologize if this sounds edgy or like I'm pointing fingers. I don't want it to sound like that. I just think the processes haven't been followed well enough here. Now we're stuck with a bunch of ugly signs that nobody wants. And I think there are some people who feel strongly that we should keep them. But if this was democracy and if the most votes wins, I think that's a losing side. But I don't think that's what we should be doing here. I think just because we have the votes to take them down, we should take them down. You heck with the people who want them here, who don't feel safe on ethics. I think we should be looking for compromises. We should be working together, trying to figure out what can be done that'll make everybody happy enough. Maybe you can't make 100 people happy, you make 95 people. And what is being presented today from the engineers as to what they think, it's kind of a take it or leave it, kind of, my way or the highway. You're not giving us any maneuvering room. I think we need to take a step back, figure out how we can all agree on something that's smaller, that is less obstructive of the views. And I think that's what we need to do.
Thank you. I know there's a lot of passion around this. If we can.
I'll try to do it.
3 or 4 minutes, that would be great. Just I want to make sure everybody has a chance.
I just have a few points. I want to I appreciate the presentation. None of the options presented change the issue. I'm not even talking about resolve the issue. In my mind, as a very vested stakeholder in this, none of what was presented changed the actual issue that we have. And so I don't view anything that was brought back. And I just wonder why that would be even anything that would bother be presented. It didn't change. It tried to mitigate, but it clearly, as you can see from even his own drawings, fails at what the core issue is, which is shed. Point out that view blocking the view shed. Why is that important? So we haven't really talked about that much. The property values of my property and the property down the hill from me are impacted by this. Wasn't considered, as we know, was not considered at all as the city made these approvals. Jeff walked very nicely through, the public understanding of the history of it. We've gotten loads of private history or the city history, but the public history I think was very well understood by Jeff. But these do affect people's property values, and that's something that your insurance company can. I want to reiterate something that Jeff said, because this is, as many of you know, this is a very passionate point for me. The process was not followed. The city council made a mistake, and I don't think that's undeniable. They made a mistake in the way that a lot of you weren't here for it. Some of you were, some of you weren't. The city council made a mistake when they did it the way they did it. Ultimately, it might have landed in the same place. I doubt it would have. Ultimately, it might have landed in the same place. The process that was undertaken was they made a mistake the way they did it, and you guys have to understand that very clearly from the paper trail. I also find it odd that we have this discussion about how opposed people were to sidewalks, and that our solution would be to put up signs. I'm just going to put that out there, but I mean, isn't that sort of a strange thing that it's like, we don't want sidewalks, it clutters the town. Oh, we'll put up some more signs. It's a really strange solution to a problem that people were opposed to at the time with sidewalks. Lastly, there's a lot of stuff going around about California law. I would very much suggest that most of the people here should stay away from that, because most of this is not California law. It is judgment, as we discussed earlier. And I also want to, I know I tried to correct from the audience there, I apologize for that, but I want to point out that during the presentation that was given, the 20 feet from intersection law, this town is exempted from due to our size, and we do not have to follow that California law. Second aspect of California law I want to point out. The state of California has recently changed their jaywalking. They're just a second while I get there, but they changed their jaywalking rules, and that you cannot get a jaywalking ticket in the state of California unless you are causing yourself or someone else potential harm. Okay. So what the state of California is doing is giving contradictory seemingly contradictory guidance, which is they very much want pedestrian safety and all this kind of stuff, but they're also saying, hey, pedestrians are smart enough to know when they can and can't cross. And I think we need to think about that for this town. There are great sightlines on Edwards. The places where actually we have the crosswalks are about the worst places we could have them, if I'm being perfectly honest. Even people who I know, and I won't name names, but people who I know who are advocates for having all of this, they come down Hector, they turn right down Edwards on the same side. They make the short right turn. They don't go across the crosswalk. They make the short right turn. You know why? Because that side has a wider stroll. That's where anybody who lives here is going to walk down that side of the street. I know it's not with flow. It's not against the flow of traffic and all that. That's truthfully where it's going to happen, right? And so if we're really worried about our people in town, well, we kind of already have a way to walk pretty darn safely down that side of the street. So leave it with that, unless there's any questions. Yes.
What's the basis for Trinidad being exempt from the
It's written into the law.
20 foot?
It's written into the law. I can't remember the exact population number, but I believe it's a population number. If you're less than some number, then you not need to apply with that law.
Well, I wasn't aware of that. It's not really the issue we're talking about here, but it's interesting to know.
I thought it was important because I figured it could come up again. So
I just want to add that the US classifies rural communities as 5,000 people plus.
All right, thank you. Other public comments?
I just have a question, and it's just this, and it's one of those legal questions that I'd like to talk to Bryce and Russ about. We had sidewalk, we had crosswalks there before. If the crosswalks there before were approved by the council and designed by an engineer, then that design immunity shouldn't go away because you later decide that something additional might be helpful, right? You already had immunity. Does your immunity disappear because you make improvements? I don't think so. I could be wrong on that. And separately, just because there is a more safe design doesn't get rid of your design immunity. I mean, you could put tunnels under the street, but that wouldn't get rid of your design immunity because it could be safer. Doesn't matter whether it's safer or not. So the question really here, and finally, if you have one engineer on a design say that they believe that that's safe, and they've actually looked at the design, absent showing that they're utterly incompetent, you get to your design immunity point. Unfortunately, I as an attorney, I had to litigate that, as you know, Bryce, and that's where the ball field stands. But I would be interested in that concept. Does your immunity go away if you do something else?
Very convoluted inquiry, and the reality in California, the exceptions to design immunity are almost as great as the protection of the rule itself. Anyway, there's a brand new Supreme Court case relatively new, 18 months. Failure to warn is problematic in this circumstance where we already have an existing design in place. The short answer on design immunity is this: the council must act reasonably in whatever design you approve, even if that involves removal of traffic control devices. So you need some record of reasonableness.
I was looking at a case today in which they sued the city for putting up essentially the signs you have here, saying that it was leading people to ignore their own safety. And so it's one of those. I mean, can you ever get away from getting sued for people? The question's really going to be, can you get out of it as swiftly as possible? And that's going to turn to your design.
Yeah, so we'll look at that a bit more. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Other comments from the community, please, Mary.
Take the routes 780 Underwood Drive. Like Bryce, I've lived here 48 years now, and I can't recall any serious accidents, excuse me, on Edwards. Years I've lived here. Certainly no fatalities. Biggest issue for me on Edward Street is during crab season, you've got a lot of traffic going up down the woods and a lot of commercial vehicles, big trucks hauling crab. So those are the real safety issues that I see. I'm going to change it here a little bit. The impetus for safety improvements on Edwards kind of goes back to the elephant in the room. Yeah. In my personal view, the lack of by the city to do anything, improve, maintain, fix the Van Wyck Trail since 2010, 2015. It led to the point we're at right now. Van Wyck Trail was and could still be very safe passage today. You've heard repeatedly from the public at planning commission meetings, your city council meetings. There's a sentiment, heavy sentiment from the Trinidad public to fix the Van Wyck Trail. Now, I'm going to move to another item on here, which is the pickleball court. I read the staff report on that. Somehow the city got $178,000 grant funding from the Parks and Recreation for that program. But they're spending $65,000 on pickleball court. Is there any way you could move some of that money to fixing the trails in town? I mean, seriously, if we can spend $65,000 on the pickleball court, then we can find $65,000 to at least do another study on fixing the Van Wyck Trail, which improves safety in town. What it stands right now, with flashing lights and the crosswalks, just take out the flashing lights, leave the crosswalks there. People see crosswalks if they're driving down the street, they're going to see them at least. But the flashing lights are gross. And they're in the view sheds. I can only imagine if I lived where Anna and Andrew live, where the Manette's house is, where the people that are staying in the apartment behind the eatery. Somebody pushes that darn button at midnight. It's like the 4th of July going off down there. I mean, it's ridiculous. So, two things. Take out the flashing lights. The next thing is let's fix the Van Wyck Trail. Let's come up with some way to have safe access to the harbor. Don't have to walk down Edward Street. Van Wyck Trail's the elephant in the room.
Excuse me, Dick, may I ask you a question? I don't understand about what you're saying. If the Van Wyck Trail were operating, you'd still have to walk across.
Sure, we've got sidewalks.
So I don't see how that solves that.
It solves the problem. It solves the problem of walking down Edward Street.
Yes, okay, thank you.
That's the main issue there for safety. Who would want to walk down Edward Street if you had a nice Van Wyck Trail like it used to be? There's got to be a lot of ways that could be approached. Now, and the reason that thing was canceled back, in 2019, 2020, I can't even remember. It was a Caltrans grant. I used to work for Caltrans. I know how those things work. The design on that, and it's no fault of the city engineer, it's the fault of the design standards that Caltrans had for that grant. A soldier pile wall down there that could accommodate requirements of the Caltrans grant, so you can have multimodal transportation going down that trail. That's why that thing was so overblown. The issue of cultural resources down there, the city doesn't know anything about what those cultural resources are.
I'm gonna have to pull us back, sorry. Yeah, but your point is taken, the Van Wyck is relevant to this discussion and your request to bring that up at the council is point taken. Thank you. Other comments on the HSEP project? Oh, okay. Right. Good. Eli and Janine, and thank you for helping me.
I'm Janine.
I got to see you back.
And there've been some really interesting things said, and I really appreciate a lot of them. Dick, thank you for bringing it to Van Trail. I always walk that way. My choice, because it was a nice walk, and it is recreation to walk on the Van Trail, so maybe the pickleball money is recreation. Listen, I'm a California native, and I moved to Philadelphia. I lived there for 2 years. People laughed their butts off at me the whole 2 years I was there because I would stop at every crosswalk, at every little picture of the person walk, don't walk. I'd be stopped, waiting. All my friends would be a block ahead of me because they're from Philly. They know how to jaywalk. And they would laugh at me. I didn't understand that that's what you were supposed to do in Philly. I was a California girl. I stopped when it said stop and when it said walk and so forth. But my point is people learn. People can learn about jaywalking and learn about going in crosswalks, and drivers can learn when they see someone else at a good thing. When they see the crosswalk, that's a flashing thing to a driver to see stripes on the pavement, and that's a help. That is probably better flashing than flashing. When I'm driving, I'm watching the road too. I don't always look up high. So that's one thing. Let's remember that a long time ago, we used to have a sign at the intersection. This may be before a lot of you lived here. We had a sign at the intersection by the gas station that said, oncoming traffic has the right of way. For the people coming down the hill, people coming down from the freeway entrance, you didn't have to worry about some idiot turning left in front of you as you're coming down and you don't have a stop sign. You didn't have to worry about some person jumping their stop sign when you thought you had the right of way. Because that sign said, oncoming traffic has the right of way. But our city attorney at the time, I believe it was Nancy Diamond for the history, said, oh, that's giving advice. The city can't give driving advice. We might be liable. So let's think about that when we have all this discussion about what the city's legal indemnity or problems for the city because of making changes. So try to have a little common sense versus the fear issue. And the last thing I'm going to say is, when people make mistakes, that's a sign of a big person to be able to say, I made a mistake. I had an idea and it wasn't a great idea and I made a mistake and now I'm going to fix it. Or maybe I'm going to be humble and say, gee, I had a dumb idea. I do this all the time. My editor in that union is wonderful because he makes me look much smarter than I am because he fixes my errors when I send in my writing. He corrects my grammar or he corrects my misspellings or my typos. I'm happy he does that. It makes me look good. Thank you to my editor. But let's give some people some room here to be able to say, hey, we made a mistake. Let's try to fix this. Thank you.
Thank you. Eli.
Just wanted to comment that mainly because I was mentioned before as the city manager. So regarding Ocean and View and also regarding Edward Street. So what we did then with Ocean and View and also Edwards and a number of other streets in town, through GHD, they hired a firm that went ahead and gave us traffic counts and also speeding for a number of the streets. And that's how we ended up coming up with the fact of violations and the degree of violation that happened on Ocean View. Secondly, the issue with Ocean View was to ask people if they wanted the speed humps on the road or not the signage about the speed hump. That was not asked. It was asked about if you wanted to have the speed humps on the road. So street signage all around town, we've never asked, is it okay if we put up some street signage or are there issues about it? So I just wanted to make that main distinction that it was the speed humps that we were addressing. And then Katie, you made a good point. When you're going from the upper part of town, you're going to have to cross Edwards one way or another, whether you get to Van Wyck or you go down to the harbor or whatever, you still have to cross Edwards. So either way. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions on the H-Chip project? Oh. Right, I don't see any others, so I'll bring it back to the council. You've now heard from Josh, we've had some discussion and you've heard from the public. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to thank everyone who sent in letters and made comments orally tonight. And I guess I don't have to tell you, how tough this can be when you have lots of people from your own town, trying to persuade you one way or the other on something. We're doing the best we can. But after listening to everything and all the time I spent myself, reading the cases about design immunity and all the ins and outs and talking to our insurance company, I feel like it would have been a lot better to notify the people on Edwards about the plans to put up these signs, even though it probably is not legally required because they're safety signs. But still, the precedent was kind of set, even though, as Eli pointed out, nobody asked us, do you want a sign to go along with your speed bump? Just speed bumps or not. So I think we should have done that. And it is true that signs are extremely heavily regulated under our ordinances. So that's sort of should have given us a heads up, and also views of the harbor are heavily protected, when it comes to signs, particularly. If you, it occurred to me today as I was looking at the photographs of the signs and contrasting them with the Katy Smokehouse and Seascape signs that are, grandfathered in because they're so old, but they're so different. They're just like night and day, and they actually kind of fit into the scenery in the background and all that. But we really can't say the same for the flashing signs. And as Josh pointed out, and I appreciate him conceding it openly, that the signs are not legally required. We can have the signs without the crosswalk. I mean, we can have the crosswalk without the signs. What we need to keep our insurance company happy is an engineer to say, yes, that's a reasonable thing. So just like many professional opinions, like a doctor, if you get a doctor's opinion, oftentimes you get another opinion because professionals have a wide range of viewpoints and way of analyzing things. So where I'm at right now is I feel like we should see if we can consult another engineer, and we'll review the safety, road safety plan, look at the site, any of the factors that were mentioned about lack of prior accidents and so forth, and see if he or she can come up with an opinion that would keep our insurance company happy, because we have to do that. We can't take the risk of losing coverage on Edward Street down there. So that's what I'm feeling right now.
Other thoughts?
the city does not need these signs to keep us safe. We never did. Dick Bruce pointed out, he lived there 48 years, never had an issue. I believe that, you know, I walk down that street all the time. I don't choose walking over those where it tells me that it's crossed because it's out of my way. I choose to cross into other areas. So yeah, I would propose to remove all 4 signs and create a community advisory committee to find a proper solution to meet our unique city's needs. That's what I would propose tonight.
Well, do you understand, Jack, that our insurance company says in order to take the signs down now, you have to get an engineer to say that that would not be an unreasonable thing to do. So from my perspective, it's important that we find that piece to the puzzle. I mean, I agree they should be taken down, but we need to do it a certain way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we
yeah. Could we ask our city attorney who's here tonight to weigh in?
we could. Pleasure of the chair.
Are you asking him to weigh in on whether or not the second engineering opinion would suffice with the insurance company? Because I think that's an insurance company question, right? That's a zero question, but I'm not sure.
Well, let's ask him, he's here. You want Sergeant City Editor to answer the question, right?
Just trying to streamline.
Certainly, as a council would understand, be reluctant to give a legal opinion in open forum such as this on something that may have an impact on the city's future liability. That stated, one thing that is absolutely clear about the dangerous immunity protocol and the design, the design immunity protection from dangerous condition, Government Code 830.6, that you act with reasonableness and you have a factual basis and some evidentiary record to support whatever determination you make. With that understanding, I would endorse what the insurance company agent has told the city and the council member is attending. And I think his proposal is very reasonable.
Thank you, Russ.
I'd be in favor of your suggestion, Bryce, getting another opinion and seeing if we can be protected legally and take down the signs. But that still leaves us with the problem of children walking down Edwards, people who have disabilities walking down Edwards. And that's why I'd really like to see us move with energy towards a sidewalk that continues the sidewalk that's on the upper part of Edwards, continue it all the way down. Then the people who need protection, even though they haven't been hit by a car yet, won't be hit by a car because we've got a sidewalk. But I would be in favor of taking down the signs if we can get the legal support we need, and then proceeding with this next step.
Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with all that's been suggested. I mean, I think it's really important to make sure that we're covered with our insurance company and just getting a second opinion. I'm all on board with that. I think the signs do need to come down. I am on the board, our on-town council to represent the school and me as a mom. And I have to say that I don't think Edwards Street is safe for children. I don't think it's safe for people. I don't think there's a clear walking path down to the beach, and we need to create a solution here. So removing these signs isn't creating a solution, it's just a temporary fix. And, you know, I've walked with my 2-year-old down, you know, to the beach, and I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's safe for all of the whole, and, you know, to go against what the school has suggested for me is, you know, I just feel bad doing that, but I think it's the right thing to do considering all of the feedback from the community. And then the majority of the community doesn't want these signs, and I can totally understand everybody why you would want signs. Flashing lights, they're obnoxious, and plenty of things to consider there. So yeah, I'd like to remove the signs and go through the protocol to remove them. But yeah, definitely we'll also want to encourage to find a better solution, and I'd encourage us to create an advisory board or get the residents on Edwards together and perhaps have a little meeting with you all and talk about a better solution, including family trail and or just easy ways to get pedestrians down to the beach. And I guess my other concern too is that I think that we'll see that transportation is going to change quite a bit in the next 10 to 15 years. You're going to see a lot more motorized segways and lots of different more creative ways for people to be getting around town. And that's something we need to consider too in terms of our long-term vision for Edward Street. And I don't know, I mean, I always hear about fatalities in Arcata all the time, about people getting killed, going through, you know, all kinds of crosswalks. So I don't think that we should just assume that we're immune from that happening here, just because there's a lack of precedence. I think, yeah, there's definitely the potential that people can get distracted driving down Edwards, and a serious accident could happen, and we'd hate for that to happen, of course.
So I have a little bit of a different perspective in that I like the idea. I think I agree with you all, except I'm not quite ready to say that my goal would be to get a second opinion to take the signs out. I think for me, my goal would be get a second opinion, as Mr. Berry, I think, pointed out, that, you know, are there some other alternatives? And if those alternatives include taking signs out and replacing them with something else, then I would like to hear about that. I think, although we've heard a lot of public opinion against the signs, I also hear a lot for them. And I think the real controversy in some ways is for the folks that live on Edwards that are directly impacted by them, in their view, it is particularly difficult, right? And for the people who are not, who are on the other streets, a number of folks have told me how much they like them. And I've really implored several people to put in their public comments, and they were concerned that they would, their neighbors would be upset with them. So they didn't want to kind of put in their comments that they feel safer having the crosswalks. So anyway, so I'll just say personally, I'm not quite ready to say, I think you heard me earlier, I don't love the signs. I think I could easily see myself saying, take them out, but I'd like to get a second opinion. So I guess if someone has a motion that we would get, you know, some alternatives from another engineer, and if you want to make a motion that you want to remove the signs, that is welcome as well. So I don't know if we need to make a motion or.
Well, one point I forgot to.
Okay.
Yeah, one point I forgot to mention also is that while I want to get a second opinion, I want to put a limit on how much we're going to spend to get it.
Same.
Because I don't think that would be covered by the grant, the same grant that has funded. You know, so
that's a good point. Yeah.
I was thinking in the neighborhood of $5,000.
Can we?
I don't think that's going to cover it, to be honest. Vice Mayor.
What do you think?
What do you think?
45,000 probably.
Wait a minute. Let's ask Josh how much time he spent creating 3 alternatives, which is a new design.
Sure. Yeah, but you're asking this. You're asking.
5 hours?
Okay, I can't have back and forth.
Yeah, I'm
sorry.
Yeah, I'm just giving an estimate. Could be less. I want to, you know. It could be less, just my experience.
All right.
Well, we
trying to be honest. It's not going to be $5,000.
Who's out there for how much money until we try?
Until we try, yeah.
Right.
I was going to say.
It takes several times to find the sweet spot. I just feel it's important because, as I understand it, we came into this 24-25 fiscal year budget with like how much of a shortfall? 40,000? 50,000?
38,000.
38,000 already in the hole. And so we can't just, you know, spend money like drunken sailors or, you know, everything we want. So
maybe there's a motion, you know, with a contingency that we don't spend more than, you know, give it a reasonable ceiling.
Right, because this engineer would just be reviewing reports that have already been made essentially and looking at the site physically. I
Yeah,
can't-
maybe some of the ideas, like, we talked about this last time, like I mentioned the in-road option, I mentioned the little pylon things, which I also had, seen, we see out here in front of the school.
Well, okay, I'll move that we seek a second opinion on the issue of whether road can be deemed reasonably safe with the crosswalks, but without the flashing signs. And I would ask for a spending limit of 7,500 so we can see if there's anybody out there who can do it for that much. If not, we can look at it again. Obviously, the signs are going to have to stay up in the meantime until we get this sorted out. But anyway, that would be my motion at this point.
Would Josh be able to give us that opinion and say that?
I asked him to do that earlier and he said, no, he would not. Have to look somewhere else.
A second to Bryce's motion, or do you have any suggested revisions?
I second that motion. Good motion.
All right.
7,500. Get a second opinion and make sure that we're on board with our insurance carrier.
Okay, now that would remove one obstacle.
But in the bigger
Any
planning.
questions about the motion? I'm gonna go
I don't
ahead
think
and
we should get too hung up on a bigger picture because, Van Wyck is a definite possibility to take the pressure off Edward Street. Sidewalks are another possibility, but right now we got to figure out what to do with the signs.
I do need to call for a vote because there is a motion and a second on the floor. But I get the feeling that, Josh, did you want to interject really quick?
Further discussion.
Yeah, further discussion.
Thank you. I'm just thinking about the timing of the current project. The current project does have a contractor on board. Work is 100% complete at this point. We are looking for supplemental funding, potentially through Caltrans. That the council wants to take some action tonight. I just want to bring that forward because my concern is that if it's delayed, we need direction on what to do with the current project.
Well, there's all your work on those signs talking about is completed, isn't it?
It is, but we've requested supplemental funding from Caltrans under the grant in the event that we wanted to make any changes to the current installation.
Seemed like that.
It doesn't seem like.
That's fine, I just want to consider numbers. That's clear.
So what we're giving up then potentially is the ability to revise those signs, but didn't hear it from the council that taking.
Well, if you're going to meet with them tomorrow morning, right?
They have an internal.
They're going to meet internal. Okay, well,
They could just pause.
You don't have to, we can certainly let them know that we decided not to proceed. Instead, we just revise our request, just really to make the city whole on whatever funds have been spent.
Project would essentially be 100% complete, and whatever decisions council makes going forward will be general fund expenditures.
Okay. All right. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Josh. And so does that change anybody's motion and second? Because you're essentially.
You were a little bit different, but I'm not holding it in mind.
Yeah,
You could say it again.
actually, I'd like to follow up just for a second, Josh. Could you also just let them decide whether they're going to cut loose the extra money and if and when? In other words, tell it later. Well, as it turns out, the council's got another direction it wants to go or something.
It's a little challenging. The city has to maintain the grant. So there are some administrative responsibilities for keeping the project open. Also, the one challenge is we would need to close the contractor out. The retention for their work. that definitely the completion of the project currently. It can be done, but it's not ideal, I'll tell you that. The other thing is quickly mentioned that the design community has come up quite a bit and that reduces designability. May end up with a challenge finding a consultant to take this on. I don't know that. I understand it could be a challenge because from my perspective, what you're asking is that consultant to take on that liability themselves. They would essentially pay for the insurance for you. I'm not saying it's not possible, but you just need some hesitation.
Yeah, I think that really overstates it because under the design immunity concept, we have that engineer. We have design immunity without a doubt.
Yeah, the city.
Even if it's something that's taking down the, a previously approved safety.
Yeah, I think what he's saying is that they might want to take it.
Yeah, the engineering would take problem.
But we'll find out.
It's a potential issue.
So, any other questions for Josh? Because we're just.
Don't, and it doesn't.
We've got about 7 more agenda items. Yes.
I just have a quick.
Yes.
On,
Let me open to public comments briefly. And
it's a very quick, on closing the contractor out, I noticed they redid the curb down at the window, and the water still goes down the sidewalk. So if that's part of the closeout, I would consider that you might want to
fix that.
Continue to look at.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's still plans to improve that. I could be wrong.
I just want to make sure that was on your guys' radar.
I'm aware of that. And I think there's still plans to try to fix that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, there actually isn't any more plans. That was repaired in order to get it into design tolerance essentially, but it's a tough situation. I think we talked about this last time. You have a road on very steep grade. So make some improvements, keeping up the ramp to the extent we could, and extended the retaining curve behind it to prevent erosion. Expect that water hydro events running over that. It's not, unfortunately, it's not uncommon. Could look at additional improvements. I'm not saying we can't, especially with supplemental funding.
Okay, so did that change either the motion or the second, or you're still comfortable moving ahead?
No, I'm not. I wanted to ask you to repeat what you had a particular thing you said, and I've lost it.
I'm sorry, I don't remember what I said at this point, but do you? Thank you.
You wanted a second opinion that looks at more options than just trying to
remove the signs.
Essentially justify removing signs.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine if we have that, but I would like to see if they came up with something else that made it visible, but block view shed, for example.
It's going to be a lot more expensive. It's going to be a lot more expensive.
That's true.
So that way.
Trying to imagine
what that would be.
How you shrink the giant.
Well, I mean, the in-ground lighting, for example, was one idea that, but we found out that we had to have the signs. So maybe the crosswalk is enough. I'm hesitant because so we are essentially then making a vote to take the signs out and to look for an engineer that will.
No, we have to do the engineer first and then take.
Then fine, yeah, then I'm fine with that. I would like a chance to vote once I hear the alternatives personally, because I just like to have the information.
Well, yeah, because the engineer might say, sorry, I can't come up with that opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or comes up with something else. Okay.
Right,
okay.
I think that I don't know if we've kind of fleshed out the idea of moving them to a different location too. So would that impact what Josh, closing out the contract? And then do we know how much it will cost to remove them altogether? And is that something we need to consider for Josh to be able to?
Yeah, if we had he mentioned a few thousand, I think, or something, right?
Yeah, the cost to locate, I think it's only around 5,000 plus or minus. Yes. If you wanted to just remove them and not put them anywhere else, we did confirm Caltrans that that would not be an eligible cost to the project anymore. So you would be responsible for the costs, and I believe they were $1,000.
My feeling on that is that if we end up doing that, we should just do it in-house with our city staff. I don't think you need an engineer to take the signs down personally.
No, the cost though is you would not be able to reimburse the cost to install the signs through California.
I understand that, but we pay our city staff every day to be here and do various tasks around town, so.
I think what he's trying to say is that we're paying $10,000 per sign, and if we remove them, we look for that $10,000.
Supposed to reimburse the funders.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing we didn't really talk about is that we have to reimburse.
Maybe.
That's just not what the contract says. You guys keep saying that, but we've reviewed the contract, both I and Jeff, and the contract doesn't say that if you take the signs down, you have to reimburse Caltrans. Simply does not say that. If you don't receive the money and you change the plans before it's installed, you have to reimburse Caltrans. But look at the contract. I think you're just incorrect. I mean, we can have the attorneys give you a legal opinion on it, but I think you're wrong.
Well, I asked Caltrans, it's not my opinion, I asked them local assistance, and that's what they told me. Said that they were going to they said that they would bring it up with the program coordinator tomorrow on their call, because I also asked, is there a duration of time? So a year could the city would 5 years. They were going to ask. I'm just stating information I was told.
I would just appreciate, like I think I indicated in my letter, if that's Caltrans' position, have them attorney write a letter. That may be their position. It just isn't what the contract says, but that may be their position.
So that's another thing that we.
Yeah, how about relocating? Because Mary mentioned that there was a really good spot for these earlier.
I think that could potentially be eligible.
Yeah.
All right, so we still have a motion on the table and a second. Do you want to repeat your motion really quick just so the other councilors know, and then I'm going to call a vote?
Yeah, I'm moving that we seek a second engineering opinion about whether we can take the signs down and still have a reasonably safe road design in town. And I am suggesting that we put a cap of $7,500 that we can spend at this point on that.
Okay.
I second, yep.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved. Thank you, everyone, for your considered discussion and your patience as we work through this process. And yes, Josh.
There was a couple other action items
Okay.
related to this. I think we've maybe made a decision on one of them, which was
Okay.
authorization to put some together with construction contractor we currently have on board. It sounds like that's not going to proceed. The other one was actually in relation to our contract and some of the ongoing costs and future costs we may incur. We don't know what those are, but we wanted to give the city manager the ability to recommend it.
Right, so if you look at your staff report, the recommendations are 1 through 3.
Yeah, and I can clarify a little bit, this last meeting, I did have an amendment that came before council, and that was intended to close out the job essentially. But there's been some ongoing work over the last month. Efforts have been towards the project, and that would minimize it to the city. And so, position maybe to cover those costs, even if
Where on the agenda is this?
It's in the same item. If you look at the staff recommendations, there were 1, 2, 3. They're the first page of the staff, basically the staff report for item number 2.
Item number 3 in the staff recommendation.
That's item number 3, to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute necessary contract amendments with GHC for the HSIP project up to a maximum of $15,000. So we're authorizing to what?
yeah, it was written a little open-ended because we didn't know what direction you were going to take. If we're literally going to close this project out, it's less than $5,000.
I see. So this is just say we're closing it out.
Yeah, if you want to make.
Pay what we owe so far. Okay. So I think I could, you want to make a motion? Probably let's wait till the I guess. We'll let Jack make the motion and we'll. So did you guys hear what Josh said, Bryce and Joe? So he's basically saying that this is an authorization to close out what we already owe, essentially.
Yeah, there's no ongoing work.
Not additional work. This is just paying bills, basically.
Okay.
Is what I understood.
Correct. If there's no,
This includes the extra work that they have done to get into this meeting and to close out.
We need do you need a motion for that?
Yes, sir.
Jack said,
I'll make a motion to close out our agreement.
Authorize the city manager. If you read item number 3, Jack, that would be great.
So I authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute necessary contract amendment with GHD for the HSIP project up to a maximum of 5,000.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Okay.
A second.
all those in favor? Okay, thank you. We need a 5-minute stretch break. Ready to publish? Okay, let's take 5. Reconvene. And we're done then.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like chocolate. I mean, sugar before you left.
Yeah. You walk by that house, they're always just sitting. Yeah, it's small. That is where they. We had already heard you see some pictures of that view. When I'm speaking down the street, you don't see them.
That I can't do.
Like it's awesome.
All right. I totally. All right, we're gonna continue on. And there we go. And I guess the question is, at some point we may decide for some of the agenda to the future meeting, but we'll soldier on the.
You serve at the council pleasure, Mayor.
It's, yeah, almost 9, so I get the side eye. All right. So the next one is item number 3 is discussion decision regarding the revised draft MOU between the City of Trinidad and West Haven Community Services District. And this is regarding the water system emergency intertie. And so I'll turn it over to staff.
Evening. So there's just a few staff recommendations in regards to the staff report, but just a little bit about how. I'm sorry, getting really bad feedback from the.
No, excuse me, it's been requested that you talk right into the mic.
Okay. So really just wanted to give you an update on the intertie project. It's been stalled for a substantial amount of time because of the amendment process. Changed the design, which we're still working on. We have a deadline to complete that in April. And right now what's coming before the council, and this is just a draft, this is not to be approved. It's the MOU, so the memorandum of understanding. Right now we've been operating under an interim MOA. And now we just need to readdress it, look at a few different things within the MOU itself. One of them, a notable change that I put in here is the cost sharing. So I believe it was in 2022, the council originally agreed to a 50-50% split. That's how you wanted to proceed for the cost overruns. West Haven came back, they said, no, we want to do a cost sharing proportionally, our system is smaller. the total was 66.66% for West Haven share, and then, I'm sorry, for the city, and then 33.33% share for West Haven. We'd like to revisit that and go back to the 50-50. And the reason is because the shift in roles and responsibilities have changed. And so the city actually is going to be taking on a lot more responsibility. And we've also already put in 15,000 because we've gone over budget and planning. So we've already essentially have a credit towards that cost overrun. And so at this point, I just would like council to discuss the cost sharing change, direct staff to begin negotiations with West Haven, and that needs to happen very soon. And hopefully this month. And then I also need city council to designate a subcommittee, a minimum of 3 members, with the power to authorize the declaration of emergency and respond operators in the event of activation of the emergency intertime. And staff is recommending that the council designate the city manager, chief plant operator, and city.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Angela? I have none either. This makes sense to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
sense.
Yeah.
For that.
With the MOU of that. Yeah.
Not really. I read the MOU, understand what you're going to be doing. Do you have you gotten any sense of how open West Haven's going to be to negotiating the cost share?
I will say that we haven't heard anything negative, so that's a positive.
All right.
Won't know till we try, I guess.
Yeah.
They did contact us and we had some communication. They agreed that the MOU needed some work and said that's what we're trying to do. And so they are looking forward to getting to work on this.
Okay. Well, okay.
Oh, and I was just going to say too, so within that MOU, I was also very clear with West Haven as written, that is not final as well. So they are aware because the roles and responsibilities in that have to be addressed. So, and that's, if you're looking at the additional supplemental documentation that I provided, I believe it's exhibit B, the Trinidad West Haven intertie roles and responsibilities, that also flags everything that needs to be negotiated. So they're very aware.
Okay. All right, let me see if there are any questions or comments from the public then about the MOU. Your type project. All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council where we will entertain a motion.
I'll move staff recommendation of number 1 and 2. Authorized to negotiate in one subcommittee as described.
Thank you.
Right, and Marcetti is seconding that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thanks for the continued work on this, you guys. This will be great if we have an emergency need for water to get this done. And I know it's been a long project, so.
Because my item was also next.
Okay, great. So the next item is the discussion decision regarding improvements to the racket court and through the per capita grant. And this one we have received a fair amount of some amount of public comment, as well as in the room tonight. So remember?
So really, this is also just an update of where we're at. We're in a position to go out to bid this spring, but bringing it back to the council, and we can of it, and there's some complaints regarding noise, but I don't see a whole lot of people for this project. I provided, some information in the staff report in regards to sound, and I don't know if the council wants to just begin addressing that issue and go to comment. But regardless, with this project, if we don't do any new usage, so it lines up with the whole part, we can't have the 10-foot resurface. It won't be covered. So anything repair or maintenance is an option. So that is something to consider with the project.
The money is only forthcoming if we do something new.
Yeah, we need to open up new usage.
And I hear from a lot of tennis players that they want that tennis court resurfaced.
I was just gonna ask how bad it is because I don't play tennis, so.
Crack and pretty significant crack. And so, yeah, people mention that.
I know that there's like a low noise paddles. Are we gonna be having those at the city hall so people can borrow those? Or? because-
We could, there was a question about enforcement, like if we said, oh, you have to, like you have
Right.
to use them or something like that, it would be hard to, enforce it, to go and say, oh, you're not doing, using the right paddle.
Yeah,
And to consider.
Realistically, could we enforce it?
During summer hours too, daylight is longer, but city hall closes at 3, there's the weekends, so people access that.
Apparently there've been some cases too with people suing for the noise.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk into another hornet's nest.
right.
We did, Joe and I and Bryce went out and we went to one of the pickleball courts and we stood there a bit. We couldn't get our decibel reader to work, which is why we put the gate in. Kind of stood there and it wasn't that loud, but these weren't like professional players. They were, apparently when you're really good at it, it can be quite loud. So I'm on the fence on this one a bit too, because I've heard from a number of people that pickleball, they love it. They want to play. The nearest court, I think, is Giantoli over by Tractor Supply. So, it's not super far, but.
And there are places all over the county too.
There are, others, I guess. Arcata, probably.
Someone mentioned the thing over near the museum. But then that wouldn't help us repave the tennis court.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, but.
I think,
Microphone.
yeah, we had a question about moving it to the park near the library. Unfortunately, I think that park has a covenant that requires actively, not acting.
I had an idea that I'll just throw out too, which was instead of doing with pickleball, you do both sides. And I thought, well, what if we do it on just one pickleball?
The street side.
On
The west
side, like the west side, facing the street, and then we didn't do the other side. So that way you never have 8 people playing at once, you only have 4, and they're on the street side, I don't know, it was just.
If it was on the street side, the noise would bounce to like Karen House.
Make it worth it.
Yeah, that's my fear, why she moved it.
Other than that, it's a good.
I don't think that's why she,
Yeah, it was just.
my wife talked.
And other questions, I will go to public comment unless there are other questions or comments for Angela on this.
I would like to see some type of signage that says only, you can only use like low, like something like low sound balls and mallets.
Yeah.
And so if there was an issue, we could go, Gabe could go out there and enforce it. You should use.
House is like right next to the.
Let's see, Karen, that one's for sale, so it'd be a new person. Bryson's
Will we
not
have
too far.
really gotten any feedback from them?
And Dorothy. Public comment, maybe you can tell us about. Tell us your thoughts. Okay. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and unless we have other comments. Let's go ahead and do public
If we
comment.
did not use the funding for this, purpose, could we use it in any other part of the city?
Yes, so another project that hasn't been awarded yet because we're still going through some motions, but it's to fix the boardwalk.
Okay.
So that is where some additional funding is going. But there's, I'm sure, other areas that we can apply this funding to, but this is the one that so far has been.
Do you have any idea how much it would cost to resurface the tennis court sample one?
Don't have that offhand.
We can like find that out.
Wouldn't the boardwalk be considered repair and maintenance also?
No, because it's actually, so that's considered capital outlay. And it's because it's allowing for a continued use of other recreational areas. And I can find that email specifically from the current speaker, but that was my understanding, that it's still opening up uses to recreational areas, and so. That was a question I had, so, but we clarified that.
Could these funds be used for, like, say, like, we wanted to design the playground, so we could, we would need a professional designer. Could we use those funds to like put that money towards design?
I would need to check with the grant manager on that, because from my understanding, it is something that needs to be completed in its entirety, so I don't think that we could just use it for the planning phase of it.
Okay, let me go ahead and open up to, oh, sorry. Somebody, oh, did you have another question?
No.
Oh, what part of it?
I'm saying open it up.
Okay.
I'm looking at how much does it cost to repurpose the transport. Okay, public comments on this?
Okay, I'm so happy to get better. I'm not Janine Volkmar anymore, I'm Emily May. Emily May lives in the city of Trinidad. She also has a business in the city of Trinidad. And she satellite phoned me this morning from the Grand Canyon, because she said she hadn't turned in her comments on pickleball. So she asked me if I would give comments on pickleball. So Emily doesn't live exactly near the pickleball, but she rents her Reiki studio, which is right there. I mean, it's a peaceful spot for her, and she helps people. The last time I saw her, she was giving a dear person who lives in the city a foot massage because that person was on hospice and died. Emily was doing it as a gift. So she asked me to say, please, no pickleball. Remark. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Grand Canyon. Yeah, she, you know, for those who don't know Emily, she's a slackliner, which means when you see that line 200 feet above Baker Beach and a person walking on the line, some people call it a tightrope, but it's technically called slacklining. That's Emily. And she is rafting the Grand Canyon, and I hear slacklining the Grand Canyon. Yeah, you want to do it?
You have to just a hike in there.
Right.
For a person on slackline. Thank you. Other public comments? Dorothy, did you want to tell us about your concern?
Hold the mic down, Dorothy.
I like it. Not there, not at Wes's, I live right there. I have been impacted, I've lived in that house for 48 years, and I have been impacted by the noise in this area, town hall, events, halls, parties, receptions. One of the reasons that town, that tennis court is broken down as it is because anytime there's a wedding reception or any kind of party here, that's the babysitter right there. They just put their kids in there, and I'm not kidding you. They put their kids in there and let them just run around, scream, yell, everything, jump the nets, hang on the nets, twist the nets. I've seen it all. About years ago, 6 years ago, when Dwight was on the council, there was a noise committee. Because I had those of us on the alley who were so impacted by the wedding receptions here, we just prayed for rain or drizzle at the reception so the doors are closed. I volunteered to be on that committee, and the decibel word was used, and White was going to use a decibel reading. I never got invited to one meeting. I don't think they ever had one meeting. I think you check it, but there was there ever one meeting? And we all volunteered to be on it. There were several of us. I don't like the tennis court at all. I have one lady that comes every day, 11 o'clock-ish day, with her barking dog, and the dog barks, and if you haven't met me yet, you will. That dog barks, and I'm fairly used to it. It's a barking dog. It goes away in about an hour, 2 hours at the most. When I read some of the comments and concerns that people have, one of them is that we will attract line to get to the pickleball court. They have to be here and wait their turn. And then I think of the issues that this little area that's my backyard will have. I'm not crazy about the noise, right? Wedding receptions, I can stand on my deck or give me my hot pen and I can hear absolute word for word conversations. And Bryce can't hear them, and Carmen can't hear them, and I don't know about the lady in the yellow house. It's something about, and I'm just one person in town, just something about the flow of the sound goes to my yard. I have no trees because they don't have a tree, only have an apple tree, it's farther down, but I'm not looking forward to something like this impacting me in my last year with Trinidad. I've lived in that house 48 years. It'll be 48 years this year. I like my house. I like my neighbors. Oh, nice.
I hope so.
I like my neighbors. I love Cotton. The rental will have a new renter in it at some point, which is benign, but Katie's far enough away, she probably doesn't hear. Tom and Kathleen are the same as I am. It's a direction. It's a direction that going, and they don't maybe hear the tennis courts, but they definitely hear the screaming kids and during a wedding reception. They hear everything that goes on in this alley area. I've had people in, like, we have to have people waiting. I can see people waiting in the alley behind my gate and impacting that area back there. You know, I'm looking far ahead, maybe it's not even gonna be that bad. But my vote is a big fat no. Big fat no. They can go to June totally. We can figure out another way to fix the surface on this, if that's really how bad it is, but doesn't stop anybody from coming. They can tell you, there's people that all want. There's people there all the time. I don't mind the tennis players or the barking dog. No to pickleball, thank you.
So we should put you down for a hard no.
I'm a big fat no.
Okay.
I am. And I haven't been to these meetings in years and years, because I get got wore out from all of them. This is important to me.
Thanks for letting us know. Thank you. And we had public comments as well, and Kathleen or Tom sent a letter.
Yeah, Kathleen.
Voted no, yeah, not voted, but no. Other pickleball comments? I don't see anyone online with a comment, so I'll bring it back to the council. What do you guys think?
This is exactly what I was afraid of when I asked about the noise. I can just hear, you know, you going pom, 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 pom. But and Dorothy's right, I wouldn't hear it because of where I am. But the people on that first side of the alley, they were driving nuts. And before long, we happened, you're saying, take out the pickleball. So I, particularly seeing that there are courts all over the county. So it's not like we're filling a must need court. And then Jack asked, can the money be used for something else? And yes, it can. So we're not going to lose the money. So
Thank you. I would say thank you. I will tell you, Mary and I walk, as you guys all know in town, we walk almost every night. We can walk on that cool road the other day, but we walked yesterday and we're gonna walk tomorrow. We have met a man and his wife that live way up at this point, and they play bocce ball maybe twice a summer. We've met him twice. He's a Dodger fan, I'm a Giants fan, so we always do move back and forth. But that's and we walk to the museum in that area every time we walk. We clean up there, we do the gazebo, that's our thing. Nobody plays bocce ball, there's weeds in there. Nobody plays bocce ball. And it was a nice idea that maybe if the pickleball thing or Jack's idea of a playground, I can't see that being feasible over there either, sorry, Jack, you know, but I don't know, the pickleball, I don't know how big it is, you can only have it on half, which is dumb. It's not, this whole thing's dumb, but that's not a bad spot over there. You gotta get around the men and women that sleep in the gazebo, but you know, that's a thought.
Yeah.
They say we can't do it.
We can't do it. No,
Check there, right?
yeah, we, there's an easement, so you can't do like soccer or anything like, that has in physical.
One thing I would recommend is that we go back and check again on that with the easements and stuff. Right?
No, it's with the city of, it's with the land trust, actually.
The land, okay, then never mind.
But
yeah,
but the neighbor on the hill wouldn't like the noise going back and forth. Yeah.
So, back to the council. So I came into it, really want to pickleball more in town. It's more, exercise for everybody, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, I'm like, it's in a residential area, no matter how you slice it, right? So I'm in that, I agree with Katie. At this point, I'm surprised that I'm saying this because I thought it sounded really fun, but I would never enjoy it if I knew that the whole time I was playing, I was disturbing someone's peace anyway, so.
Yeah, we kind of learned our lesson earlier. Just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Well, what do you guys think?
Well, I'm going to kind of be devil's advocate.
Okay. Okay.
Having lived there for quite a long time, it's like a mixed use neighborhood. There's a lot of noise. We have the fire siren goes off very loud there. We have the dogs barking, like Dorothy said. We have people mowing their lawns, running their weed whackers. Just, a wide variety of human activity, people doing stuff. So I'm sympathetic to the ones that want to have the pickleball. It's popular, it gets people out there running around. Really, one of the loudest consistent noises that you can hear there is the kids over at the schoolyard. But that's like a happy sound. That's like a really noisy, and it's kind of irritating sometimes. But then I think those are the future leaders of,
Yeah.
And so you got to make accommodations for sound. So I'm really torn, and this is a hard one because there's a lot of people for and a lot of people against. I read all the comments.
Yeah, and the kids. It was brought up that the kids would like to play pickleball, that's a sport that they're getting into too, but
Just one other thing to add, that I do want the council to be aware of, if, then all of the funds that this so far will not be reimbursed. I reported on this with the grant activity report. I spent, and I don't know the exact amount at the time, I'd have to look at all the records, but at that point in time, it was over $10,000.
That we've spent doing what?
Getting ready.
It's the entire process of putting together the documents and.
just spend money to make money.
But the money can be used for something.
Well, not if we.
I'm not following something.
So can you revisit the question of can the money be used for something else, the grant money? Because Katie's a little confused that why would we lose 10,000 if we can spend the money on something else besides a pickleball court? I don't know. I don't know.
That's above her pay grade.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Becky. So this is a very odd type of funding process that is very awkward. You put a bunch of effort in to go over these hurdles like the land tenure and CEQA, which didn't need it, but we still had to go through that process. Anyway, so there's been mostly staff time put into this, and this grant it got paused. It's been, I think it started like in 2016 or 2017 when the council heard about pickleball. They heard about a couple different ideas that we had, and we just haven't been able to get over the hurdles. And so the money that we spent toward the pickleball and tennis court have been out of the city's funds. And then once we get the contractor in place, then we could submit our first invoice that includes the pre-construction effort and then going from there. So the entire grant allocation is still available, the 177 whatever.
is still available until we start drawing on it. And if the council doesn't want to go forward with the pickleball, then that will just be, it will not come out of the grant. But the city, I mean, the city's already paid that, over the past year, so it's not like it's already spent.
We just won't get reimbursed.
We won't get reimbursed for it, so.
Did that answer?
You know, why was this not presented to us as a neighborhood or a project before you started?
So, okay, so Gabe, this has been a long time in the process, so it probably was brought up in staff reports, but no decisions, except for when we originally proposed this project, because we were looking for like what kind of recreation things could we do, and we, you know, there were a lot of ideas that had to do with trails that were never going to get over the finish line within the time frame of the grant. So it ended up that, and I think Gabe originally was going to get this tennis court surface, and then so it did come before council, and I think the council said yes, proceed, but I came unprepared for that question today. So if we want to look back and see what we did, do you recall?
The city has an asset that it needs to maintain. And we got a lot of feedback over the last probably 6, 7, 8 years that the court is not up to snuff. There's cracks. People are tripping on the cracks, and the surface is very deteriorated. And and we learned about the per capita grant program, or the per capita funds, and the pickleball aspect was also sort of like an up and coming activity that people were really excited about. And during budget meetings, we discussed how are we going to maintain some of our assets, and the budget meetings is where these discussions occur. You know, how can we improve not only the town hall, which is got a lot of backdated maintenance that needs to occur, but also our recreational asset. And this was just a pathway to get that expensive process paid for. And it was a favorable path for a while. We've done some outreach, and I think more time has gone by, as our city manager will tell you. You know, more feedback communities have been receiving from pickleball communities, and how the sport is growing so fast that it's you know, nuisance conversations have occurred as a result of that exactly. So you know, it's just, I think it was something we were looking at and pursuing for some years, but it's okay. We've been getting more feedback about the impacts.
Yeah, that's
the perfect storm.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of throw something out there. It would be possible if the council does not want to do the pickleball, it may be possible to come up with something to do with the court that isn't pickleball, but is an improvement or an additional use. I have no idea what that would be. That would be a way.
Badminton. Yeah, badminton.
That would be a way, you know, like you just have to do something beyond maintaining an accessory.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. There was another. Were you gonna say something?
No, yeah, I mean, I think exploring some other racket sports that
aren't noisy though.
Right.
Do you think badminton would be, for example, that was one of the suggestions, is that something that would look,
that's quiet,
you know, create an improvement? I guess we'd have to look into it.
It would, and
Because
that's
it's
like
still in
super
there.
quiet.
Yeah.
You can't even hear it when you hit it.
Basketball hoop.
Super quiet.
Doesn't play the game, it's basketball.
All right, well, I think we have a decision to make about the pickleball part of
Yeah, we
this.
do.
And,
Well, let me, I want to make it a little more as devil's advocate here.
okay.
You know, I'm aware of all the litigation that's gone on. That's usually, you know, in the big cities. And especially when they have the big courts with like, you know, 6 people playing at once, really loud. We just had one little court on the west side, so it's as far away from Dorothy's fence as possible, and my fence, I might add. I just feel like, well, we could give it a try, you know, and if it becomes a problem, we could take it down. They're not very complicated. You know, it's like.
Those are very simple. That is simple.
We take down the sign. Insurance company involved.
That's a good point. So, you know, give it a try. I mean, you know, I kind of like the idea of doing one side.
Eli's going to weigh in again.
Yes.
Yeah,
I guess you're.
I think that's a great idea, having just the one half and see how it proceeds. This way it allows us to move forward with the grant. But the other thing I was going to mention, I know we've talked about it before, and Jack mentioned it tonight, the noise canceling bracket. And of course, enforcement is one thing. But, you know, we're in a decent community. And I think if we have, you know, just some signage where we do have at the doors about the proper etiquette for tennis, to say something about pickleball, and if you play pickleball, that we would prefer that you would use a noise canceling racket. And we can have a few available here during times when we're here. And just ask the community, you know, please obey, you know, or follow this protocol, yeah, out of courtesy and so on. I think we get cooperation, and also out of the interest of the neighboring residents. So, you know, I think it would work. Then there's also a ball that I'm told it's a soccer ball too. So we could also mention that. But the combination of those two, I think, are possible. And then like having just the one half court instead of having pickleball on two sides, I think would help.
Thank you.
Well, we need some data, some auditory data.
I think about this decibel.
I'm still on the committee for noise if you want to.
Yeah, I don't know what that.
Just a thought about the noise canceling rackets and all that. If we're going to do that, I think we should say they are required. Not that we would appreciate if you use them. And some people will just do it because the sign says so. And the ones who don't, we might just start circulating the word that, you know, if you don't comply, we're going to have to close this down. So, you know, it'd be more than just a polite request.
And how hard would it be to take out that pickleball court after we install it?
I don't think it's very hard. They look kind of portable to me because you take them up and down. When you're not playing pickleball, you take the net down and then people can play tennis.
So we can take the grant,
It's not like
do what we want, and then just never do it.
That's what I'm thinking.
I was not going to say that.
No, I don't think that would be a good idea. But they're easy to take down, and we could have the sign, and city staff could, you know, when it's convenient, if they're working nearby and they hear people out there playing, they could go out and say, oh, you got the noise canceling rackets, don't you? And if they say, no, we don't, they could say, well, you know,
Staff.
that's not going to work.
I think we should, I feel like I would have a hard time, you know, I feel like it'd be hard to enforce. And so I might kind of make my decision based on somebody using maybe using a normal racket sometimes, but I love the idea of trying to, you know, get people to be courteous and so forth. So but I think unless there are other questions about any other questions or comments, we should maybe entertain a motion one way or the other, and we can put it to a vote. Anybody feel like they want to?
Yeah.
No, I'm going to vote against it, so.
Oh, there's a hand raised.
You can make a motion.
I'm sorry. Aaron.
Hey, I apologize, I'm at work, but just very briefly, interesting idea to test it out. I recall a family visiting town a number of years ago who put tape down on the court and put a very polite sign saying, hey, we're in town, we're enjoying pickleball, please leave the tape here. I might suggest that if the council wants to test something, that might be a good way to do it. Put it out there, invite some pickleball players. There were several letters in favor of it, and let everybody know, hey, there's gonna be pickleball going on Saturday and Sunday. Come out and listen so we can actually see what it feels like. People can listen and actually hear with their own ears what this is like. Respectfully, I would suggest that only half the court is 20 or 30 feet distance. I think sound travels pretty far. I don't know if that would be a meaningful reduction in that. Just a suggestion to do a temporary trial run like that. And as far as taking the court down, I would suggest that once the striping is on there, that's going to be pretty hard to undo. People are still going to come and play with or without a net, and they might bring their own net. Thanks.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. So what is the deadline for, what's the deadline? Grant decision, so that I'm just curious if we have time to do tests.
Don't have the exact date, but we have until 2020. So we have some time.
Okay. Okay.
This grant has gotten extended substantially because a lot of their entities also have.
Okay.
We should maybe table this and I listen to what Aaron.
Aaron gave it.
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea on the floor is defer this decision for further testing and try it out with the kind of a taped court to see.
With the mats that are.
Yeah, quiet the rack, out, listen with the decibel thing. Dorothy can weigh in. No.
Someone had to do a decibel reading, so on the books, you're gonna get right.
Yeah. Yes.
Well,
I'm not gonna stand out there and yell at people. I don't do that. That's not.
Oh, no.
It's miserable.
No, we wouldn't expect that. Yeah, we wouldn't expect that. No.
Well, Dorothy, what they're talking about is setting up like a test. So you could come out and hear for yourself what it sounds like. Yeah.
Right, well, I think
conversations.
Yeah, I think part of our challenge here is that I think I can sense when the council is reaching, it's getting late.
Saturation.
We're reaching saturation, so since this isn't an urgent matter, it sounds like we have a motion to defer this decision, and give it further thought and potentially do a test.
I wasn't listening closely, so that's not going to impact the fiscal side of it.
That's what I thought you said. Is that true, that if we defer this for a month, that doesn't impact you? Okay. Yep. Okay.
Make the motion.
Make a motion to table it to a future agenda item after taking steps to do testing, audio testing.
Yeah, so we'll have to figure out what that looks like. Yeah. Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so what do we have here? We have the Water Advisory Committee. And then we have the policy for future agenda items.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and Council. We have before you tonight the Water Advisory Committee sunset decision. You have a bunch of information on this staff report on how this committee was stood up and the objectives that the purpose of the WAC for, and also specific objectives that the WAC needed to achieve while it was active. So the staff report includes that there were much of the action that this council asked for was achieved, and is recommended that the WAC is sunsetted at this time and could be stood up again should the need arise. I'd answer questions if you have.
You say it would be sunsetted and could be stood up again.
Sure.
Would it have to be reconstituted at that point?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a part of your municipal code, so drought would trigger it, or any other council, it's council prerogative to stand it back up at any time they choose.
Yeah, I guess as a person who served on the Water Advisory Committee for a couple of years and chaired it for a couple of years, I'll just say that I feel like there were the WAC served its purpose. It came up with a recommendation for the water tanks, for the distribution pipes, for rainwater catchment systems, and built a brochure for that. Recommended the city council to evaluate or consider feasibility of hookup to Humboldt water district, which the council voted against, but the WAC did recommend that at one point. And then really the latest conversations when Bryce and I were both on the water advisory, the conversations that were starting to happen were more long-term strategic, and we felt that those should just, or I felt that those should just come to the council. So we really kind of ran out of steam on kind of short-term, near-term projects, because the projects that we were discussing were the big ones with the council. Also things like managing the water plant, hiring a CPO, Coleman engineering, all those kinds of things. So that's why I'm, as the chair of the committee, I'm recommending sunsetting it, because I think those conversations will happen here. And Bryce, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I pretty much feel the same way. We all did some fairly deep digging and came brought forward useful information to the committee and the council. And even though the drought wasn't specifically what really triggered it, it was a big animating factor that was really hanging over our heads at the time. And thankfully, those days seem to be past, knock on wood, for how long. But so I agree that we can disband that one for now.
Okay, thank you. Any public comments regarding the water advisory committee? Patty.
It's no late, it's not fair. You guys do an awful lot of volunteer work, and I think the water advisory committee should endure, and the reason is I don't think it was fully developed, 3 years ago, I guess, when the Humboldt Bay Water District idea was set forth. And I think there was a lot of emotion involved in the decision to not go forward with Humboldt Bay Water District because of the Trinidad Rancheria wanting to hook up. The Trinidad Rancheria, I think, are going forward regardless, and the Trinidad Rancheria has been a wonderful partner for the city over the years. They continue to be, and they're going to be here for a long time. And I think there was a feeling developed over the city because the Trinidad Rancheria put so much money into the water system years ago. A lot of money made us really whole. Budget-wise, and if the Trinidad Rancheria is going forward with hooking up Humboldt Bay Water District, they're going to do it anyway. It just seems like it would be wise to consider a continued conversation in this regard with them. They're going to do it if we did it at the same time. I remember this discussion of, well, what if we wait and the city did it later and the Rancheria did it now, and would we save money? This is an awful lot to consider so late, but I feel like the committee did a lot of great research, and even if it didn't meet a lot, it means you all have so many volunteer responsibilities. And I lived in the city, I don't live in the city. If I did, I'd volunteer, but that's just my opinion, to continue it, even if it's not every week or every month, or I don't know. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, Aaron has his hand raised. Aaron?
Yeah, just briefly, I'm a little bit on the fence on this one, having been a member of the Water Advisory Committee. But Cheryl, to your point, if oh, can you hear me okay? Okay. If you are
okay, go ahead.
If you are going to disband it, I really hope I really clearly heard what you said, Cheryl, and that is that that you felt that there are long-term, longer ranging issues longer ranging issues, and perhaps raging in the past that the council needs to continue to discuss, and I'm going to hold you accountable to that. If the Water Advisory Committee is being disbanded, there are absolutely long-range water planning issues for the survivability and sustainability of the city's ability to deliver water that have to be considered. So the council needs to make the time, have the bandwidth, and put the time in to have those discussions, even though they're potentially controversial, right? So thank you.
Yes, agree.
Yeah, I agree that disbanding the committee doesn't take off the table any options for future anything about water. That's not the idea.
Yeah, and I like the idea of the council hearing, one of the things, I was talking to Dwight, who was also on the Water Advisory Committee, and one of the things we were talking about was the fact that at the Water Advisory Committee, we have these experts come in and they would give these, detailed presentations, but there would only be usually one or two members of the public in the meeting. So it was a very small, and then the Water Advisory Committee. And then for us to just then take that data and translate it to the council, it's like, it's great for the council to hear it firsthand. So that was my thought.
Makes sense.
But that's the thinking. Paula, were you trying to say something when you were off mute? I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted Erin to finish, but I don't see her now. Okay. All right, then let me bring this back to the, oh wait, were you going to say something, Amber? Okay. Okay, and let me bring it back to the council. What are the thoughts?
Makes sense to me what you're saying. That, why have an water advisory committee that gets all this intricate data and then you've got to repeat it? Seems like it could come directly to us.
At this point,
the fewer committees.
Seems like we could inform the public too more about the water issues than, like the presentations we've been receiving. So it'd be really helpful for everybody to be informed of that.
I move that we sunset the Water Advisory Committee without prejudice to reinstating it in the future if needed, and with the council fully open to long-range planning for water needs of the city directly to the council.
And I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. All right, so the next item on our agenda is a pretty straightforward one, I think. A little discussion on it, but it's just the discussion decision to develop guidelines or a formal policy to submit future agenda items to the council for consideration. So this is a follow-up just on our discussion about how do we decide what goes on? How do we collectively decide what goes on our agenda? And Joe, did you want to
I think you
share
did a
your
pretty good
thoughts?
job, Mayor. It's the last item, so I'll let you all have it and decide what you want to do for future agenda items.
Okay, sorry, that was my watch talking. Yeah, so I think the way it's been working, and maybe this will streamline things, is the mayor and the mayor pro tem meet weekly with the city manager. And we discuss based on input from the council members, from the public, and from staff, kind of what are all the things coming in, and then we prioritize the list and we determine the agenda. But what we were thinking about last time, because one counselor recommended something for the agenda and another counselor wasn't sure, was if for example, you suggested, so any counselor suggested an item, and it didn't get prioritized by Bryce and I and Joe in our weekly meeting, you could then say, we would come back to you and tell you why, and we could put it to a vote at the council. We'd literally say, like, if you wanted to talk about, I don't know, the playground or something, and of course we'd want to, but let's say we didn't, then you could say at the next meeting, well, I would like to put that forth and I'd like to put it to a vote. And then by that way we can get a democratic process. I think sounds good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Although I think for the Brown Act, if the council wanted to override, I'll call it the executive,
right,
that would have to be put on a future agenda.
Yes. Yes.
But we could notate on in the first page that under staff reports, if that comes up, that there's always a possibility of discussion and decision regarding overriding the
X agenda, like a
yeah, so we can
placeholder.
take that action
Okay.
legally, because the public was advised that there's a possibility that we could
Yeah, I like that idea. Okay.
overriding the
Okay.
committee recommendation.
Okay, I think Pollock came in person. So hold that thought because we've already.
My computer was not.
Unfortunately, we've already voted and we've moved on to the other agenda. So just take a pause, have a seat.
I would like to say something, even if you voted already. I don't know what your vote was.
Okay.
But I want to have a few words.
Okay.
Should we finish, let's finish this item.
Yes, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so,
sorry. So,
okay, so,
you were talking about having like a
yeah.
placeholder in the
So the
agenda.
agenda would always, under staff reports, would have a sentence explaining that.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that based on the staff report, the full council might overrule
yes.
the committee so that the public knows something. So we essentially comply with the ground.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so transparency in government is.
That wouldn't really give the public a chance to be notified of what the item was, would it?
Well, the item wouldn't be decided at that meeting, only the fact that it's going to be put on the next agenda, be voted on by the council.
Yeah, so we make sure that basically we talk about all the agenda items that we want to put forth. The public can put forth, staff puts forward, we make a decision and then.
Make a decision.
And the full council can
And then
overrule.
at the next meeting, it's not me.
Yeah, the full council can always.
We didn't make this agenda.
And say, we want that on next time.
Yeah, because what we're trying to do is instead of what's been happening the last, few years or whatever was before I joined even was that we would have these meetings, the weekly meetings would happen, but you didn't necessarily know if you had suggested, like I would suggest agenda items 2 or 3 times and they might not make the agenda. So I think we're just trying to make it more,
more democratic.
More democratic,
So,
thank you. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Committee
So
doesn't
that's-
have too much power.
Correct. We want to have equal power amongst the council because we're all equal. We're all equals.
The same checks and balances in Washington DC.
Right, so I think, yeah, so let me, any questions from the council before I open up to public comments on this one? Okay. Any public comments about the process we just described for setting our agendas? I don't see any, so back to the council.
Aaron.
No, pardon me. Aaron, did you have your hand raised?
Sorry, yeah, my hand's a little slow here. At the surface, this seems like a good thing. I just want to make sure that we're solving an issue that needs to be solved, or that you guys are, that there's still a good, solid mechanism for the public to be able to provide input and get issues raised. Yep. And then I guess my comment is, it's kind of a representational council, right? The council's there elected by the citizenry to represent the citizens' interests, not necessarily their own beliefs or interests. And so even if we have a committee or a majority of the council members voting one way, I just want to make sure there's still perhaps language written into this policy that says if the majority of the citizenry comments are leaning one direction, that might perhaps override a council's majority vote to make sure that the opinions of the body of citizens of Trinidad can be heard, if that makes sense.
It does.
Well, that always goes without saying, I think. Anytime we open it up to public comment.
Yeah, it's not a voting, though, is the thing. So, for example, as representative government, we don't put agenda items to the public for voting, for example. And we couldn't in the room even say, 5 people say this and 3 people say that because we don't know what the other 250 people say in town.
Well,
I guess my point is respectfully, if the majority of residents, want to have something raised, but the majority of the council does not, I think we find ourselves at a bit of a,
Yeah.
issue. And of course, the ballot box can always solve that, but that's not a terribly good solution in our town where we run unopposed or, are begging for candidates from time to time.
That's a good point, Aaron. Yeah, I guess, I think Bryce is right then. I guess I was just, most of the topics that I come up with are because I've heard from the community. So I think the council, hopefully, we would definitely be listening to the community and what they want to talk about.
yeah, that would be awfully hard.
Not to ignore it. But yes, you're absolutely right. That's a good point. Keep the community in mind. And we're representing the community.
Before the vote, where one or more council members want to overrule the committee decision, it would be opened up to the public at that point to weigh in on.
Yes.
How they think we should vote.
By agendizing it, we'll get public input. Okay.
Well, agendizing it for the next, but I mean at the appeal. Vote.
Right. Yes, at the appeal part.
Yeah.
Which is also right.
Yeah, it would be built into the agenda.
Yes. Okay, I understand.
Okay.
I think it makes total sense. Other public comments though on this? Yes, Anna.
How would you?
And Paula, you had your hand up, but was it to talk about WAC or this?
WAC.
Okay,
How would
that's wait, sorry, because we are at I'll get.
I'm patient.
We'll have to open it back up.
How would such public comment be solicited?
So if we're discussing agenda items for future topics, we discuss it under future topics and then we ask for input. Then if it's on the agenda, the public comments on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, when I say, I go through the agenda with the council and then I ask the public if they have any comments on the agenda. So that's a place where you can say, I don't think this should be on the agenda, or I recommended this. And then we can say, oh, okay, well, we didn't prioritize for this meeting, but it's coming up in 2 months or something. Does that make sense? And you can send emails, you can call.
I guess I was thinking less in terms of you're at the meeting, but let's say something is controversial at one meeting and then you're like, oh, we need to know if this is something that matters to the public. How is that outreach happening? Email people or text them or.
No, that's a good point. We did a community survey to try to understand people's preferences. Right now, most of the way that we hear from people are, coming to the meetings or sending emails. We haven't done a lot of polling. Our website actually has that capability, and we've talked about doing that. I don't know if I'm answering your question the way if somebody else wants to take a stab at it.
You did mention something about community alerts about signing up, like in Los Angeles, for instance, you sign up for alerts and then the city just sends you things that are relevant to the city, like there's a lot of rain in LA this weekend, so there's.
Yeah, I believe our website has notify, so you can sign up and there's some agendas, anything that comes out on the website, so you can sign up for a variety of things, committees, commissions, all those boards that meet. Check out what you want, alerts for, and we'll send you those.
Yeah.
And then it's automatically sent.
Yeah, it has SMS and email, but we haven't been getting as many signups as we'd like, so that's a different.
It's a problem in every agency I've been in. So a lot of people ask for more information, but they don't put it e-notify. And
I used to be a journalist and I covered LSU.
yeah.
Other stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll sign up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And tell everyone you know.
Thanks, but you're raising good thought, because more how we get more public input on the agenda and the agenda item. I think we need to noodle that a little bit.
I apologize. May I make just one more?
Yes.
Again, I just, being very honest and frank, I'm concerned over whether or not this is an actual problem in our town. Coming up on 6 years I've been a member of the community and attending these meetings, I've not been aware of this being an issue or a challenge to get items onto the agenda, and maybe that's just a lack of information. But it is interesting that that has become now an agenda issue to be discussed after the water issue was raised at the last meeting, and I've not had this on my radar as a concern or a challenge with our city government. I guess that's all I'll say. Thanks.
Well, I guess, Aaron, what it is, you know, apparently at some point, a pattern and practice evolved organically between the mayor, the pro tem, and the city manager of how to make the first cut for agenda decisions. And in the process of that, we just asked ourselves, is maybe we should make this the official policy, just clarify so the whole world knows this is how you get something on the agenda in Trinidad.
Yeah, I think it was.
It's not, there was no like big pressing problem, but it was just like a loose thing hanging out there, a loose end, like maybe we should just tuck this in and do a little policy.
Yeah, I think it was.
I would agree with Bryce. Like I used to ask for things on the agenda and they never show up. And so I just stopped asking.
Right. This would give you a power.
Yeah. Like how many times I asked to get the power lines underground and have a discussion about that or other items.
Right, right.
But
Yeah, this way we would come back and say, oh, we talked about that, and this is why it's not coming up in the next months.
Yeah.
And you would have transparency, and so would the public.
Right.
And yeah, it's part of it is new city manager, so it was a good opportunity for me to say, and Bryce to kind of say, oh, I was like, he's like, how have you guys been doing this? And I'm like, well, you know, Jack and Steve were here, they met with Eli, they had this weekly meeting, I just kind of picked it up, and so. Yeah, so anyway, I have an obligation to get the council out of here at a decent hour, so I'm gonna move us along. I don't see any more public comments, and
I'll make the motion.
and hang on. But we are still not talking about, wow, sorry. Not closing.
We got to finish this item first.
This item.
we have future agenda.
Closing the item.
This is the last item. And then we're going to reopen yours.
Thank you, Ben. Briefly, we'll do it briefly because I'm in trouble here. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm moving that we adopt the policy that I explained. Does anybody want it restated?
I think it's basically just that there's a committee, the mayor pro tem, and the city manager meet weekly. They will bring those items to that are not selected to the public and the council as appropriate. And
right, in like your report,
yeah,
you will say we did not select this item, or this item, and at that point, any council member that wants to sponsor those for the agenda will say, well, I move that we include so and so.
Okay, I'll second that motion. All those in favor? Aye. Well, it's in line. Okay, so before we go to future agenda items, so I need to take 2 seconds here. We have voted on WAC. We have voted to sunset the WAC committee, and we agreed that strategic topics, things like were someone to suggest the city should do a feasibility study on connection to Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, or look at other long-term strategic sources, deal with climate change and water provisioning resiliency. Those kind of things would all, and possibly things like water plant management, rainwater catchment. A lot of the things that are more strategic long-term, well, forget rainwater catchment, it's not as strategic, but would come before the council. So the council agreed that at this point, the types of discussions that were happening at WAC next were going to be so strategic that they should just be directly discussed at the council. And the decision was made to sunset the WAC. So I don't know that we need to open for public comments at this point. The vote has been taken. However, if you wanted Paula to spend a minute or two to share your thoughts, I will allow that. Again, just a minute or two, and I'll open to public comment post this.
The original objectives, the tasks that WAC was tasked with,
were not accomplished. This past given out at the very first WAC meeting which I attended, I offered a way of being some public outreach, educate the public, and get the public involved. Suggestions were never acted upon. I believe acts that have not been accomplished will be more of a challenge for the city council to accomplish. I think what we needed, well, was an active WAC. I think we need to go back 3 years. I think we need to tap. When I say we, I'm speaking for the city council. We need to outreach to the community and get people more involved in gathering information to give to the council. So, experience with the city is deeply traumatized by the meetings that happened 3 years ago as far as evaluating whether we should investigate into Humboldt Bay. It's a lot of angry sound bites by very organized media group located in Cascadia, and they can still be accessed if you want to see what those sound bites are. The website is HAWK. And the level of discussion and confusion that occurred at pivotal meetings over 3 years ago ended up in the city decided, well, maybe we'll put into this in 3 years. 3 years have passed. I'm hopeful, but I will not be at all surprised if the county down the road, as it has for decades, if you look into the paper files at the Civic Building, this issue has come up periodically because Trinidad has periodically been subject to droughts. Some people still claim that climate change is not a real thing. And it has been kicked down the road for decades. It used to be, it could have been done on pennies for the dollar decades ago. And now
I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap up, Paula. I'm so sorry, but we started at 5 o'clock. And so we're on our first hour.
I apologize because my computer started.
No, and I did ask if you.
My computer wasn't.
Yeah, and I know, and I have read your public comments, and I know, and I from our meetings at the WAC, and you know, Bryce was there too. I know how you feel about this, and I know you have strong feelings.
See if this council will
do our best to surprise you and do something good.
That was created. Surprise me.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for that. And any future agenda items that you would like to be on? Thanks, Patty. I would like to mention the AV systems. I don't know if it should be teed up as an agenda item. Annexation, we talked about having someone come in. Jack, I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
So before Polly got here, I was going to recommend having a feasibility study of creating an emergency intertie with the Rancheria when they connect to Humboldt Bay. So basically, it's a switch. We are low on water. We turn on that switch. We fill up our tanks again.
So having an emergency intertie with Humboldt Bay versus
and it would create the folks that didn't want the intertie with Humboldt Bay happy because it's an emergency intertie. It's not going to create more water for us, but it's going to give us that reserves. So when we do need it, we can just turn on that pipe, fill up our tank, and good.
Are you wanting that as an agenda?
I want to like a feasibility study of creating
Oh,
that emergency intertie. We already have a 4-inch pipe going from our tank to Rancheria. One day Rancheria won't need that pipe anymore because they're going to be connected to Humboldt. So we just need now a switch to turn on when we need extra water. The infrastructure is already there.
That wouldn't preclude a bigger conversation about whether or not we should tie in.
No, it's basically, we're just taking it from Rancheria. We're buying it from, or we're just
Sort of
using there as an emergency.
Emergency water
I
source.
think that agreement with, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
Member Tuttle, I think that agreement would probably have to be with Humboldt Bay Water. I don't think it would be with the Ram.
sure. Yeah.
It would have to be with, I'm sure there's.
So.
Right, there would be some ins and outs with it, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think we can find someone for that. For
You
sure.
know, I don't think it's really a pressing issue because probably getting them hooked up is still years away. If it
Yeah.
ever-
Right. Yeah, it's gonna be
It's a great idea. that we
Yeah,
should keep in
I think it
mind.
is.
kind of keeps,
If and when.
yeah, it keeps everyone happy. You know, guys against it, guys for it.
Very interesting.
That's a good one. So we'll talk more about it when it's agendized. And anything else? Any other? Okay, kids, you're doing a great job. We're adjourned.
That made me feel pressure.
You were.
I was.
I don't have anything.